In this episode, we gather not just to mourn a loss, but to celebrate a legacy. The legacy of a true icon, a pioneer, and a fearless performer who gave everything to his craft. In this episode, we pay tribute to the one and only Sabu, a warrior of the ring whose impact will echo for generations to come. His scars told stories, his silence spoke volumes, and his presence was unforgettable. This show is for him. Wild, raw, and unapologetically real. This one's for you, Sabu. Welcome back to the home studio and welcome to episode 46 of the Stevie Richards Show. Today will be a tribute show to my very good friend Sabu. So let's get right to it. My co-host James, who had conversations over the past couple of years and got to interview Sabu and know Sabu a little bit better and got to see the Sabu that I knew throughout the years of traveling and also wrestling Sabu. So James Romero, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I think, should we explain that your voice is a little less strained, loud today because you've got somewhere between a cold, man flu, and COVID, and that's the reason why you're quieter, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's combined with the obvious theme of the show and everything, and still kind of sifting through kind of whatever process to say, man, you know, it's just such a thing. Overall, I know everybody who's listening and watching has lost somebody they care about, loved, even people they've been really friendly with, and then the person's here one day and not here the next, and it's kind of a, you know, the eternal mystery of, you know, life and death, and you know, just doing the show like this and a little bit more, I guess, reserved and a little bit more low key, along with the illness, it kind of fits together, you know, to talk about this. We're going to laugh and tell stories. And, you know, Sabu was an underrated worker and an underrated comedian in some ways. A very, very dry sense of humor and a lot of great memories of Sabu once you get to know him and what he's really like as a, you know, you had famously said in the Patreon watch along, one of the many that we're going to do regarding Sabu matches, mine and others, that basically for a guy that never cut promos or talked, he was always talking in the ring. And I told you some things he was saying, like, clean this mess up. And, you know, it's just the most random stuff.
We're going to do the intro very briefly and then we're going to get straight into it because we've got so much to talk about. Stevie was like, we're lucky if we're going to get this under 3 hours, quite frankly. So we've got so much to talk about Sabu. I think we've got 5 pages just on stories about him. So we're going to make this one giant Sabu tribute, which I'm sure you'll all love. Very, very quickly, I've got a YouTube channel that I'm barely updating at the moment. I've got another YouTube channel coming soon. I don't know when. We were just talking about that after, you know, beforehand as well. It seems to be moving so slowly, but we will speed it up in the next few weeks, I promise, and there'll be something new to come out. Stevie, of course, has the fitness YouTube channel. I encourage you all to go follow that. He's on Cameo as well. Even in the depths of illness, he was still doing cameos every single day because, as I said, and as anyone who is self-employed knows, you do not get sick when you're self-employed. There's always something to do. You can't take a day off, so you've just got to get it done. So Stevie's been doing some great cameos and doing some very, very long answers to and very, very long, you know, like happy birthdays or Merry Christmas or wonderful Easter or, you know, tremendous coming out party, anything you want, or if you just want to ask him a question, then he's very, very accommodating.
But the people actually give me a lot of information now that they know that they're going to get as much as possible. They give me details about the person, or, you know, they want the cameo for a birthday. Somebody recently talked about, hey, my dad's so awesome to us, and he's a huge ECW fan, and they gave me their favorite wrestlers and his, and, you know, that always helps. You know what I mean? If you give me information, I'm not just trying to pull stuff out of my butt. But if you give me a college or you give me something else, I'll do the research and look into it. I mean, it's 2025, and even though I try to keep the price down of the cameo, it's still money that people could spend other places, much like we talk about with the Patreon after this, and we take it seriously and we want to give value. Even
Yeah.
for the free stuff on YouTube, we try to give the best value.
Yeah, especially with the cameos as well. I looked at your cameo, and when we started plugging it on this show, it went from, a review every couple of reviews a month, whatever. There's like a new review every single day. So you know that you're getting good value, and it's always 5 stars. So there's one more thing.
Thank you to people, because they put me in the top 50 for a couple of days.
Yeah.
A couple of days I was number 44, 46, something like that. So that felt good that people were putting those reviews up.
We also would be remiss if we didn't mention the Patreon as well, closing in on 1,000 members. It might be 1,000 members by the time you look at this, but in tribute to Sabu, we watched his last match with Joey Janela from a few weeks ago. Lots of critiques, lots of opinions that go into that. We're going to be doing more Sabu stuff in the coming weeks as well, including Stevie Richards versus Sabu from House Party 1996, which is basically the singles match that you said pretty much put you on the map as more than just a comedy sidekick, as someone who could actually be taken seriously as potentially a headline wrestler in ECW, and he would sort of set you off on that path as well. So a lot of, I guess, gratefulness on, your part to Sabu for giving you great matches and everything. But the one thing we came away from the Patreon with Sabu at 60 years old, wrestling his last match, was, has he had a hair transplant? We think he has. I think that was our takeaway, the biggest one.
Or he just has great genetics and the hair just grew back, because he had shaved his head in TNA during the EV2 days, and it grew back. And it grew back like almost right after that. So I'd have to kind of maybe counter your kind of suspicion and say maybe it's just great genetics. Oh, by the way, I'm looking at my watch. It's May 14th as we record this, 8:30 a.m. Sandman has still not gotten into the ring for that match to save Sabu. He's still on his way. Sabu, like, come on!
Man, it's good that they had two sides of the ring with no ropes or barbed wire or anything on, because I don't think Sandman would have fit in otherwise. His belly was huge. And I'll tell you this as well, because I said this on the Patreon. He was looking really slim when I saw him last year.
He always, even in the new ECW, he leaned out and he actually got a lot of good muscle mass put on him. But if like he literally lost that belly, he'd probably be just as lean as when you saw him last time. But right now, he's the sandwich man, not the Sandman.
He is, indeed.
Can't believe you said that. I can't believe you coined that phrase.
I agreed that, and I did not coin that. You coined that. Sign up to the
Welcome to
Patreon to know for sure, is all I can say. Right, so we're going to get straight into it. Sabu passed away at the age of 60 on May 11th, 2025. I think easily a Mount Rushmore character of ECW, possibly the most influential. Now, I'm going to put this to you. Is there anybody out there who's been more influential on professional wrestling in the last 30, 35 years than Sabu? You can even say for good or bad. But, with the tables, the high-flying, the all-round ability of Sabu, or of Terry Brunk, the person behind the Sabu character. We're going to refer to him as Sabu throughout, of course. But is there anybody who's influenced wrestling as much as he has over that period of time?
Probably two people, but Sabu stands out as a completely different category of this because he just is unique. I mean, you just look at his body, and that literally tells the story of violence. The scars, everything on his face, on his body, his back, his chest, everything. But the only two that I can think of that right then and there, and both of the two, Sabu and this other person, look to Terry Funk as the person that changed the landscape and is forever remembered. The other person would be Mick Foley. So I would put Terry Funk as the father of hardcore that really influenced tons and tons and tons of people. And then Sabu and Mick Foley had their own individual specialized type of hardcore wrestling that when you combined them and they wrestled each other, you had something really special. So that would be probably the three people that have influenced. The two main ones would be Terry and Sabu, would have influenced generations to come within that. But definitely with the tables, the chairs, the dives, the unique spots, using those weapons, I think Sabu is far and above anybody else, that the ability he could do that.
Yeah, Sabu would actually influence Terry Funk It'd be one way, and then with everything Sabu was doing and Terry Funk always having his finger on the pulse, I guess, of professional wrestling and never having the ego of, well, it was always better in my day. He would evolve, or he would change his style to sort of, be more relevant for the 90s fans, I guess.
They had a symbiotic relationship, like all three of them, and then you put Dreamer and Raven and all these people in there. Everybody was willing to work together for the art of it, and Sabu definitely embodies that.
So, no cause of death has been announced yet. He retired for the first time from wrestling a few years ago. Weirdly, he announced it on my show, of all things. But his body was broken down. He just couldn't do anything anymore. I think he retired at the age of 56 or 57, something like that. And also, the death of his longtime partner, Melissa Coates, basically affected him for the rest of his life. Talking to people who knew him as well, they all basically say the same thing. He was terribly affected like that. We're going to be talking about later on in the show your personal memories of what Sabu was like to wrestle. But for now, we're going to be talking about more like what he was like as a person and his influence on the business as a whole. So, what was Sabu like as a person day to day? Because I heard an interview with Lance Storm, memorializing Sabu, and he just said, despite his appearance, despite the fact that it can be hard to get to know him, at least at first, he had a really good heart, no filter, no BS.
No filter, no BS is exactly going to explain the reason why he didn't go further into professional wrestling. No politics either. I wanted to start with context here, as we always try to do. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be as close to him or know him as well as a Rob Van Dam, a Bill Alfonso, other people like that. But the general experience with Sabu, I think, would be uniform as you get to know him as a person. And there's definitely walls up. And I believe that match from House Party 96 and getting to know and getting to earn his respect over the course of years opened Sabu up to me a little bit. We got to travel a little bit day to day in the new ECW. So that would be my day-to-day experience. ECW was always kind of like, I guess, arm's length type of stuff, a little bit closer, but very small steps, because I was just a young boy. I was green and had to earn the right to get to know him first as a worker and be trusted, and then the trust of knowing the person, Terry Brunk. But the new ECW allowed me to do that because we traveled together and I got to know him. I got to see the sense of humor and the good heart. You have to think too, I remember Pee Wee Anderson, the referee from ECW, and other people. He would have a motorhome. I don't know how long, but when I was there in the earlier days, he had a motorhome and he would drive from Michigan to the ECW arena or drive around the shows. And he would have somebody like Pee Wee and other people riding with him. And I don't think he ever asked him for any kind of, trans money or anything like that, and got him booked on the shows. And I think Sabu had said about Vince McMahon, especially, that a lot of people he cared about and tried to get work ended up working for Vince. So he was definitely something not only that gave himself in the ring and was generous, but he was generous if you were with him on the road. It was very rare that like Sabu didn't want to pay for everything, when we traveled. But we split cost and we were really, really good with that. And I never would have thought in a million years, even when they said, and it spawned out of WWE saying Sabu, and believe this, Sabu and Kelly and Stevie Richards traveling together. There you go with some picture that. But a lot of people in the new ECW didn't have driver's licenses, or they were suspended or revoked. So they had rented a car. I got the free rental car. So of course I don't mind driving, and Sabu and Kelly. But I was nervous too, because I was like, how are we going to get along? How's this going to sync up? I like to work out early in the morning, this and that. And as I got to know Sabu, I was like, man, we're actually like a lot more alike with just our routines than, I could have guessed. Now, our body clocks were different, because when he stayed up all night, we roomed together. He stayed up all night watching, I think he watched like the People's Court, and just these odd overnight shows, and I was trying to sleep. And then when I got up for the gym, he was sleeping, but he would always want to work out in the morning and at least try to sync up that way. So you can't judge a book by its cover. That would be like, I guess, the overarching theme about my predisposed stereotype of what Sabu would be like to get to know as a person, and what I ended up knowing was a pleasant surprise.
Just as an aside, he texted me at 5 a.m. once.
Really?
He hunted out my Facebook and messaged me because he just wanted to talk about Vince McMahon. This was just after he was found out, with the NDA thing. He just wanted to talk about it at 5 a.m. I just thought that was a bit nuts. But I told that to someone else. Went, yeah, that sounds like Sabu. Yeah, that's absolutely right. So once again, in fact, just before we get to the travel thing, Bill Alfonso, talked about Sabu and said he got into the wrestling business at like age 19 or whatever, because he was a tearaway, going down the wrong road, running with the wrong people kind of thing. And something culminated where he was shot in the face, shattered a bunch of his teeth, and then he survived somehow. And then his uncle, Ed Farhat, the original Sheik, basically grabbed him, said, "You're living with me. I'm going to train you to be wrestling." And then he had him fixing up the rings and washing his car and stuff like that for 7 months before he even let him go in the ring. Just to instill some discipline and that kind of thing. So, in a sense, wrestling may have saved him. If you think about it that way. The next thing here is, because you've already mentioned it, Sabu, Stevie, Kelly travel partners. Was there more weird stories with that, or?
No, not really. Just myself looking and seeing that, like, oh, I'm working out with Sabu in the gym. Oh, Sabu and I are in a Whataburger, and he's posing with fans. And
what's the Whataburger thing? Because you sent me that as well, so we have to talk about that.
Well, we'll get into those stories and kind of keep them as segments, because they all have. I don't know if we can make them all in the one clip, but there's a lot of good times on the road. It's kind of like, I guess, being a little bit starstruck by the mystique. Now, if Sabu was here, he's like, "Oh, you bought into my gimmick like PJs?" Like, he'd probably joke about it. But it's a whole different thing. And then you get to know that, and kind of like you start to put a little walls up, like, man, this is weird. Even just seeing somebody like Sabu, who, like, there's so much mystique around him, to see him just eating Whataburger, and you're like, oh, this is completely wild in a way, and enjoy, and just getting to know him and talking to him about working out, and talking to him a little bit about the Sheik and the past and all that stuff, just general conversations. A lot of knowledge, too. They don't let the style that Sabu really left as his legacy really demote any of his knowledge and his psychology especially. He had so much psychology, and he knew how to do what, when, and more importantly, when not to do it.
Did you hear about Sabu before you saw him wrestle? Because I've seen that. As someone, basically, he came in wherever he was. He had such a reputation that you heard about him way before you ever saw him in a territory, or in a whatever promotion it may be. Was that the same for you? You'd like heard this name for a year or two before you actually got to see him?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was no YouTube or anything, so obviously I had to go off of what I saw in Eastern Championship Wrestling, that he had wrestled some stuff. And of course, you see these people, and you're going to go there after becoming a wrestler. You want to be able to watch the product and be familiar, and not be like, I don't know who this person is, when you're absolutely nobody either, So, yeah, I saw that, and there was a part of me like, how am I ever going to survive in that world? And do I want to be a wrestler? Looking at Sabu, Terry Funk, Shane Douglas, Tasmaniac, all these different people coming through. I knew I couldn't hang with that at the time. So yeah, when I first got to the locker room and just showed up with my bags, hoping to get chokeslammed by 911 every night, Sabu was there sometimes and shake his hand. But the funny part is that same exact, like, shake the hand, but Sabu had something to do. And he was always kind of like that, unless he'd get settled in and then he could talk. So at first I thought Sabu didn't want to have anything to do with me, which is probably true, because who was I compared to anybody else? So yeah, the legend and the mystique was there for a very, very long time, even after I established myself. Pretty much up until the new ECW, the mystique was still very strong, my viewpoint on Sabu.
He would obviously take ridiculous risks with his body, and he was covered with thick scars. I don't. Did you ever do like the mark thing? I guess, which it shouldn't really be a pejorative term, but you use that about yourself when you talked to certain wrestlers for the first time. Where did you bring up, man? Where did you get that scar? Or sort of like sit at the learning tree and find some stories about all the marks.
I didn't really ever feel comfortable enough to ask him that, but there was secondhand information. Either it was from matches or the Sheik did it to him to make him look like he had. Have you ever heard those stories?
Never heard that.
I had heard of it, could be just out there or but I heard it Sheik had done some of them, or they had wrestled, or he was put in the matches where he would get scarred up there. You know, little Easter egg, he was Sabu the Elephant Boy before they removed the Elephant Boy moniker.
Mm-hmm. He took his character very seriously, but I don't think he took himself that seriously, which I think is the ideal way to be in professional wrestling. Do you know what it is, right? So when he passed away a few days ago, my immediate reaction was, it felt like when Roddy Piper had died, because he was a unique character. You just cannot replicate the guy, even though so many people have tried. And it felt like there was, I don't know, it felt like just a bit troubled throughout their entire life, and it just seemed like such a shame that they maybe didn't get the recognition that they deserved. Roddy Piper obviously did more than Sabu did, but I always felt that it was a big shame that Sabu maybe wasn't as appreciated as he really should have been, quite frankly.
Yeah, we're going to get into the part about Dreamer saying that Sabu should have been a millionaire multiple times over. The difference between Roddy and Sabu is Roddy did make millions upon millions of dollars. Sabu, though, we had talked about it on the Russo show because I said that very thing, and Ben made a great point and said, you know, by him not doing that, does that make it even more endearing to the heart of the true underground, like raw wrestling fans that appreciate the art, that he never sold out and he never, you know, it would have been great if he sold out just a little bit and he got the money he deserved, but he wasn't. That's never a term. I take that back. That's never a term, joking or not, that Sabu would ever take lightly because, like you said, he took his character very seriously. He took the brand of Sabu very seriously. You have to think, too, Sabu is also representing, in an Avatar sense, his uncle, the Sheik, and carrying that legacy. So I think it was more of that the respect for his uncle and what his uncle brought and what his uncle, you know, still has a lot of that mystique. If you hear the Sheik, it's kind of like right up there with Abdul the Butcher and other people like, I'm not quite sure. And Abby has done interviews where you hear his voice and it's like very different. But I can't remember the Sheik ever just sitting down doing a shoot interview as a regular person or anything. So I think Sabu, it's 50% him and 50% the legacy of his family.
Yeah, Sabu he never did interviews for decades. I wonder what changed in him where he started opening up a little bit more, because obviously, you know, he's someone who just, even toward the end, never was comfortable talking on camera. I mean, you know, I do my best, or whoever else was interviewing and everything, but you could always tell that, you know, he was always quite nervous, and there was something in him that's so old school that I don't really think he liked giving away too many secrets still, which is, once again, is incredibly endearing.
I think also, and this is the thing with Sabu, when you get to know his cadence, you get to know him talking, sometimes he goes back and forth in a joking sense. We talked about like when, you know, he used to come up to me like, dude, I think you're so cool. I mean, other people don't think you're cool. They kind of don't like it, but I think you're cool. But don't worry about it. I think you're cool. I'll tell you, if they say anything, I'll say you're cool. Then he walks away and he comes back and he goes, you're cool. And then he walks away. Like that odd kind of like off-putting in a funny way type of thing. He was so funny, charismatic, dry, sarcastic, cynical, all those things. But in a sense with Sabu, I think he just hated talking about himself. And that's kind of maybe my guess when we traveled together, that I didn't ask him a lot of questions about himself with the scars and things like, because I think he truly was so giving as far as in the ring and other people and worried about that. He knew he was, knew what the brand was. And then, of course, the other part of it is protecting the business. You can't let that go when the Sheik instilled it in you at a young age.
So we're going to talk about, you know, a little bit of his career, obviously. It seemed that the bigger the promotion, the less special they wanted to make Sabu. And I wonder how much politics played into it, because WCW, and we can talk about WWE in a minute, but, you know, WCW in 1995, Hulk Hogan, I mean, Raven, Brian Pillman, Sabu wasn't there long enough, I understand that, but he must have been looking at someone like Sabu and just thinking, damn, I can't follow that. Same like a lot of the cruiserweights, you know. And then all of a sudden, Sabu has to compromise who he is. Don't use tables. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't do the other.
And what did Sabu do?
The first thing he did was use a table, and then they didn't sign him. Which, as you said, that underground appeal, that, you know, working class hero kind of thing. He never, quote unquote, sold out to the man. He never compromised his vision. I think that's incredibly foolhardy in a sense, but more endearing and more, you know, something you can respect from him.
Well, let's take another look at it, though, because I look at it your way, and then I kind of look at it Sabu's possible way. Obviously, I never asked him that direct question, but wouldn't you, especially back then when it wasn't so much, there wasn't so much social media and the curtain wasn't peeled back, that there's this story going around that Sabu, like, still used tables, even though management didn't tell him? What do you think is going to happen in other companies? We love this guy. We want to book him. He's a renegade. You might also say he goes into business for himself, but he went into business according to what made Sabu special. And he was smart enough to see, you're taking everything that makes Sabu away from me and making me just another right. Might as well put him in a pair of black trunks, which maybe would have been the next step if he played ball, that they called him Terry Brunk and had him trying to wrestle like Terry Funk. The people in charge sometimes more times than sometimes, like to reinvent the wheel, make things hard on themselves. The biggest example is, why don't you call Kurt Henning's kid Henning? You call him Curtis Axel. Brian Breaker, instead of calling him Steiner, he does all the Steiner stuff, but he's Brian Breaker. It's just, I don't know why they always do that. And Sabu was one of the first, and maybe the only ones that said, no, I'm Sabu. I use tables. You either like it or you don't like it. It could have went the other way, and they said, this is amazing. We got to sign this guy. So it was really a 50-50 chance.
Yeah, I find it funny how so many people wanted to sign him and then change him. Well, you might as well just get anyone then, in that sense.
Yeah, who are you signing? What did you see that wasn't there, and now he's here, and now you want to do something different with him? What's the point? It's a God complex that a lot of wrestling people in power have, to say, I'll make them what I want to make them, and we'll see.
So, you know, no major company, TNA, I mean, if you could describe them as a major company, somewhere in the middle or somewhere in the upper echelons, I guess, but maybe not major, but, you know, WWF, WWE, in both guises, and WCW, they all wanted to change him. So, 1993... once again, I think you brought it up, you know, he should have been a millionaire many times over. There was like 4 different examples, I think, where he was in major companies, and for one reason or another, he was just uncompromising. And he just wouldn't do what he was asked, or he didn't believe in the vision that Vince McMahon or whoever had for him. 1993, he didn't want to have the Iron Sheik manage him, and he said, well, I want my uncle, the original Sheik, he needs a payday, and it makes sense. And they wanted to, like, tweak his character a little bit, and Sabu said no. Turned down $250,000 a year. 1995, once again with the WCW thing.
Can we stop right there real quick? Or
yes.
You'll get to it. I'm sorry, because they did, WWF did a kind of a rib on him when they took Pablo Marquez and made him Babu, right? Was that a little bit of a play on what Tiger Ali Singh? They called him Babu.
Was that a rib?
That was my guess. That's fast forwarding past 95. I think that was 96 possibly.
No, it would have been 98, 99 when Tiger Ali Singh was doing the Million Rupee Man character.
Yeah, but he had Babu as his servant.
Yeah.
And you think about it, he had two servants. Just like Sabu in a way.
Yeah, he had 2 servants. And I can't remember the other guy, but Pablo Marquez was one of them.
Yeah, I just assumed Babu was a rib on Sabu.
So with that, there was 95 one where the, you know, don't use tables, Sabu. You might as well have just said, whatever you do, Sabu, please use a table. And he probably wouldn't have done. But anyway, he does, and then he basically cost himself a high-price contract there. WCW in 2000, this is the one I wasn't that familiar with. I did a bit of research on it. He was offered somewhere between $400 to $475 a year from WCW. Kevin Sullivan and someone else, I don't know if it was Terry Taylor or whoever it was, basically gave him the contract there and then and Sabu said, I've got to take it back to the room, I've got to read through it first. And Kevin was just like, what do you mean read through it? Just sign it. It's nearly $500,000 a year. And Sabu was like, no. I've got to read through it first. He went back to the hotel. What he wanted to do was call his mother and tell him he was about to sign this thing. Excuse me. In the intervening 6 hours between him calling WCW back to say, right, I'm ready to fax it over, Paul Heyman had called up WCW and threatened to sue. And Kevin Sullivan said, can't sign you now. It's done. And that's it. So for the sake of going back and, well, I mean, rightly doing so, reading through the contract, he cost himself nearly $500,000 a year. And the reason why Paul Heyman called was because Sabu was still under ECW contract, but like the Mike Awesome thing, before or after, I can't remember, Paul Heyman was willing to work with WCW to let him, release him from the contract early, and then, some concessions to ECW to keep them afloat for a bit longer. But yeah, just that was pure, that was just terrible. I mean, just in the course of 6 hours, he could have been, a millionaire in 3 years. He could have sat down after WWF had bought WCW and sat at home for 3 years and got paid $1.5 million nearly.
Well, we're not sure if that contract is a no-cut contract, though. It's not. We don't know if it's a Time Warner deal. That's where Goldberg and
for that money, it would have been Turner, because I think people like Alex Wright were on Turner contracts for less money, so I'd suggest it probably was a Turner contract.
So it was a subsidized contract, kind of like Spike and TNA. Spike would have some of the bigger contracts to keep it off the books to make it look a little bit more profitable. But yeah, I mean, that's a lot of contracts from 93 to 2000 within a 7-year period. That's a roller coaster ride right there. And he stayed true to himself throughout the whole thing. He did the smart thing. Think about it. It's more prudent to at least go read some of it. Have a lawyer look at it, do whatever. You don't know what. And if somebody goes, what are you talking about? That's $500,000. Just sign it right now. Kevin Sullivan and Sabu had a good working relationship, probably a decent personal relationship. So that does throw a little bit of a wild card in there that, like, if Kevin's saying, don't worry, that would tempt me to be like, yeah, as long as it says I'm guaranteed almost 1.5 over 3 years, and maybe there's a rollover thing where if you don't say no, it's another 3 years at 500 or 700. Yeah, and you're set up through Time Warner, that would be good. But you have to think about Sabu. If you told Sabu, you get to sit at home for 3 years and make 1.5 million, or you get to go out there and perform every night and make, during the course of that, 500,000. I just feel like he would want to perform so badly. It's not being a mark. It's just like, it's kind of like retiring is expiring type thing. If you're just sitting there doing nothing, everything just kind of breaks down. I think Sabu just wanted to keep moving and keep working and keep building that legacy, and he wasn't going to do it at home. I'm just speaking from guessing about his work ethic and the way we watched the watch along on Janela's show. He was having some trouble, but the minute he got warmed up, he was trying to go as hard as he usually went. He took some bumps that even full-time workers would be like, ugh. So think about that. He gave everything. And if you sat him at home, it sounds nice, but it doesn't fulfill him. So you can call that stupid or smart or passionate or not, but you got to admire sticking to once again, the Sheik's legacy. I think it really does root itself in that foundation.
We also talked about the ECW run on a previous show, December to Dismember, I believe, with Sabu always staying true to his vision, and they were trying to get him to do interviews and stuff, and eventually he just screwed it up and threw it in Stephanie's face, the page, and then, from then on, his card was marked, as they say. And, he would leave WWE for the final time in 2007. Look, Vince McMahon loved Sabu. He loved him in 93, he loved him in 2006. But, once again, it doesn't seem like anybody's going to get far in WWE without Vince personally changing something to suit whatever he's got going on in one of his three brains.
Well, let me ask you this then. What do you want, Vince, or any other wrestling promoter, anybody? You want unique characters, strong characters, and with that strength comes a little bit of pushback, a little bit of friction. And Vince appreciates that. He wouldn't have hired Ultimate Warrior back, even at the behest of Linda McMahon. He is Roddy Piper. You mentioned him earlier. Him and Vince had some stuff throughout the years as well, but Vince would bring him back because he could draw money. Same thing with Sabu. If you get me, so you love Sabu for all the reasons that you ended up not liking Sabu in the end. He's a renegade. He's an independent spirit. He literally goes by the beat of his own drum, and that makes him special. That's what wrestling's supposed to be. You have to give a little bit of leeway. Now, obviously, sometimes we talked about it with Rob and him and the new ECW and stuff like that. You have to see if the production outweighs whatever trouble you might have with the talent. And in my estimation, Sabu would have gone far beyond, because even after that happened, you told me, he continued to wrestle after that incident happened. So, Vince valued him. He saw him as somebody that could draw for the new promotion. So I don't know why they love it, but then they're like, oh, but you're doing it to me now. I don't like it. I don't get it.
It wasn't like that in the 80s. He'd bring in dozens of characters from every territory, and you'd just be put on the card and just do what you do. Yeah. And then at some point, the switch flipped where he had to change it. I don't know if it was like post Russo or anything like that, but it definitely changed when I think Russo left in late '99. Purely as a fan, Stevie, who did you think he worked with best?
Well, that's a tough question, because that's a lot of people. You could look way back at the Japan stuff. He worked a lot with people. I think Onita and him worked. Him and Terry Funk worked over there. I don't know if him and Mick Foley ever worked in Japan, but my assumption is probably the ECW thing, where he's most known for that stuff and made his name. Terry Funk, Shane Douglas, Sandman, who else? He had a bunch of great matches with Taz. Was the most famous Taz, him and Taz, and you talk about it before. The real heat between Sabu and Paul Heyman turned into a main event angle that made the main event of the first pay-per-view and carried the company to the next level. Let's not forget, Sabu and Taz were at the forefront of ECW getting the new recognition in '97 based on their 18-month angle and never touching until ECW Barely Legal. Hey, that's crazy. And they took, and that's something every wrestler can learn. Sabu and Taz didn't like each other, not by a long shot back then, but they did business together. Was it stressful? I'm sure it was, trying to figure out who's going to win that match, what's going to happen, Sabu protecting his character, but seeing that it was good business to put Taz over in that match. Him and Taz definitely, because the hype and the match did match up. Sometimes it falls way too short. That's a great question. I would say also on more modern times, him and Abyss had that Barbed Wire Massacre match in TNA was awesome. And him and Cena worked that match. He transcended. You think about it. I'm talking about 3 different generations, maybe a 4th in more recent times. I haven't seen anything outside of the Joey Janela match, but he went across 3 different generations or eras of talent and had great matches and angles and runs with them. And you could think, well, Sabu would cave under the pressure of maybe working Cena in WWE. But I think in that match with Cena, he outshined Cena. Sabu did. He just really looked great. And I thought that was going to be the springboard that would make Vince say, this is a player, and I can put him against other people that he can really make look like they can overcome the most dangerous man in the company, which I think they were trying to put Sabu in that category.
Yeah, I'm looking at, he had a run in Impact Wrestling in 2019. He was wrestling Penta and Phoenix and people like that. He's
really?
wrestled he's been wrestling, from people in the middle in the 2000s, from MLW or Ring of Honor or wherever like that. Your Daniel Bryansons and CM Punks and that kind of thing. So yeah, he's all the way back to the Tiger Jeet Singh days in pre-ECW FMW in Japan. I mean, he was doing like the earliest indies in the late 80s. So yeah, he's transcended many generations. And he didn't not fit in with the Ruthless Aggression era. And he'd been wrestling over 20 years at that point. One more thing, he always said he loved wrestling the big guys because it's just, and I like the way he said it's the easiest story to tell. He never said it'll make the greatest match. It's like, it's the easiest story to tell. It's simple for everybody to pick up, and you work from underneath, and you overcome the odds if indeed you are winning, and that kind of thing.
Boy, yeah, let's talk about that because he had some really good matches with Big Show in the new ECW. That's exactly what he was talking about there. So he could work anybody. It's kind of a weird thing because you think he's such a niche wrestler or a gimmick wrestler, not to sound offensive to him, but he's not. He's literally a utility player. He's like me, but a lot better and a lot more athletic and a lot more exciting to watch. He could work anybody and work around them. That's the key. You think Sabu, like we say, protect the brand, protect the character, protect the legacy. That doesn't mean he's not going to shift styles and work around what you do. Definitely one of the most giving guys in the ring. I mean, that's pretty obvious by looking at what he does.
We're going to be talking more about, specifically the wrestling, of course. We've talked about Vince McMahon. Here's something else, just to pick up on something you said a couple of minutes ago, is, built up the hype between Taz and Sabu. A few years earlier, Mick Foley as Cactus Jack was going into, I think it may have still been Eastern, I don't know. It was in 94, so it could have been either way. It was almost like an underground newsletter dream match of Cactus Jack versus Sabu. And Mick would write in his book, other fans have said this who were there or, around at the time. Some people thought that someone was going to die in that ring. People had, because of how strong these two characters were and how similar they were as well, is that the fans have built up in their own mind that they thought someone was either going to get maimed or be killed in the ring. That's how strong both these characters were. And these were the newsletter reading ECW fans, supposedly the smartest fans in wrestling.
Yeah, I remember that. That wasn't Mick still with WCW, and it was one of those things that he came over to wrestle Sabu, and it was an inter-promotional dream match, and there was a lot of floor bumps. I remember that.
Yeah, it was the same times I think Arn Anderson was coming over.
Arn and Bobby came in and wrestled.
Arn and Bobby,
on opposite sides of a tag team match, yeah.
Funnily enough, they did that in Smoky Mountain Wrestling as well. I don't know if it was the same year or the year before, but they had like a brief WCW arrangement as well. But in 94, Bill Watts left, 93, Bill Watts left, Eric Bischoff came in, and then I think through Kevin Sullivan, I guess, they started working with Paul Heyman. Yeah, more closely, yeah.
Yeah, it was Kevin, definitely, because Kevin was working the ECW shows as well as he was in WCW to some extent. That was the original Forbidden Door, by the way. That was the original, like, you're seeing stuff you'd never see before, and then obviously people came through, as they always did in ECW, towards those early to mid-years, when they were between WWF and WCW, or they were just working indies trying to get a job back in one of the promotions. ECW would usually be the first stop.
Here's another interesting match for you. Sabu wrestled Pete Dunne. It's all these crazy singles matches that you don't realize that Sabu has been just doing with the next generations, after leaving, I guess.
What year was that?
2015.
Wow. I didn't know Pete Dunne has even been wrestling that long, but I guess.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of his matches. It's crazy who he's been in the ring with. Madman Fulton. That's Impact.
Well, he had some matches with Necro Butcher too that were pretty rough, if I can recall. Correct?
I can believe it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, every bit as much, not as much as Joe and Necro punching each other in the face for real as the ECW. You ever see that one?
No.
There's popping each other. It's on YouTube. It's from the ECW arena, but. Man, you see what I mean? Like, I didn't know any of this as far as Pete Dunne, other people. I thought you meant Pete Gas. I was like, that's an interesting match from WWF at the time. Pete Gas, Mean Street Posse.
Oh, yeah.
I like to see Sabu in a nice cardigan and vest and shirt become a member. That's probably what they were going to do to him during that one time, is make him part of the Mean Street Posse for some goofy reason.
Yeah, elbow patches the whole bit.
Could you imagine, like, if Shane was allowed if they were allowed to do with ECW, the new ECW with Shane and Dreamer and everything?
Yeah, it would have died, and I'll tell you exactly why it would have died. Right, I'm sorry to cut you off, Stevie. He wanted to make it an internet-only show in 2005 or 2006, and it's like the infrastructure was just not there to have like quality streaming at that point. It's not as ridiculous as when Paul Heyman and Jim Crockett Jr. tried to do that World Wrestling Network in like 93, 94 online. That would have been even crazier.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about just Shane, from a style standpoint, Sabu should have been his favorite wrestler. I'm talking about creatively, not that.
Yeah.
You can take the good with the bad with Shane. But what I'm saying is, Shane could, you imagine Shane McMahon versus Sabu?
Yeah, they would have been apologizing to each other constantly because of all the punches that landed. Sorry.
No, I would have told Sabu, you don't have to do sorry on 3. Shane loved it.
I saw a video, actually. This isn't Sabu, right? It just came up on my Instagram, and it's Chris Jericho talking about working with Shane, and Shane just kept hitting him in the face, to the point where Jericho rolls out the ring.
I remember seeing that match. Yeah,
and he just kicked him full on in the face, and then drop kicked him full in the face. And it's just like, ease up. Anyway,
and Shane, when he took the bump, looked away like, oh, okay, I got it. I remember that, yeah.
I've saved that. We'll have to watch that for a future episode. Take a drink. Paul Heyman's relationship with Sabu. Was Sabu always one of his golden boys, or do you get the feeling that there was always I don't know, was there any friction? Was Sabu basically easy to deal with for bosses like Paul Heyman, who would mostly let him do what he wanted?
I think so, but also Sabu knew what Paul was and what Paul continued to be, and obviously in the new ECW Sabu was a little bit more vocal about knowing, because I got to know him and drive with him, and he knew what Paul was. And you know what wrestling in general, wrestling promoters and even some fellow wrestlers, he knew what they were. The Sheik definitely clued him into that. You have to think. You said it. No filter, no BS. Had a great heart. That's the Lance Storm quote. No filter, no BS, no politics. What do you think embodies Paul Heyman? BS, politics, filters, you know what I mean? All the things. Paul's like Vince Sr. in a way. If he talks low enough and he's smooth enough, he convince a lot of people to run through a wall in ECW. But I think deep down Sabu knew, like, yeah, this guy's just a wrestling promoter. But do good business. That's it. And I'm sure there's a personal affinity here and there. And obviously Paul owes so much to Sabu. Being on that Mount Rushmore of ECW, there would not be an ECW, nor an ECW would have survived without people like Sabu sacrificing themselves. And I hope Paul realizes that. I saw the tribute, the very short tribute that they did on Raw, and it would have been great, although it wouldn't have fit into the storyline that he's currently involved with. It would have been great for Paul to voice over an actual on camera kind of talking about Sabu and going back and forth and really giving a retrospective tribute to him. I think that was missing from the short thing they did on Raw.
I just added this at the end. It just says Sabu/Hogan knows best backstory from Saturday night's main event. What's going on here?
It's none of your business. No, I'm not kidding.
I was going to say, you told me to put it in the form.
I know. I'm kidding. So Sabu and I are traveling together. It's the new ECW, and it's Saturday night's main event in Texas. I believe Dallas, Texas. I'm not sure. We were on a house show run, which that whole run in that week or two was a lot of fun, and we'll go to a lot of their stories. But I remember we were talking our match over. I know if you watch the match, you're going to be like, how long did that take to talk over? But we were talking some stuff over, and actually what happened was Sabu wanted to be a little bit more giving in the match to me, and I said, no, this is all about you. This is featuring Sabu. They don't even know I'm already in the ring. You know, doing the pull and the rope thing. I'm already in the ring. It's featuring you. Sabu is at Saturday night's main event. Just do whatever you're going to do. I go, if you could, just give me one thing in the beginning where I'm going to keep ducking through the rope, in and out, and then I talk to a fan, tell him, shut up, fat boy, like Ric Flair would say, turn around and throw the chair at me, and then we're off to the races. So he let me have that little thing, but I didn't want anything in the match, even where I kind of cut him off towards the end and then did the Bobby Eaton split the rope bump in the corner. I didn't want to do that because this was all about Sabu and all the things I was aware of, not those contracts, but the fact that this guy deserved to push, deserved to make some money, and I wanted to help facilitate them believing in him. So we were talking it over and kind of talking back and forth. This person with a headset comes up who we didn't know with a clipboard and says, hey guys, I'm with Hogan Knows Best. And he's like, get that out of here. Get that out of here. Like, calm down, Sabu. She's like, we want to know if you can be in a scene with Hulk and what's her name? Brooke. Hulk and Brooke were over there. And I just looked over, waved at Hogan, he waved back. And he's like, we're talking a match over. We're talking, he's funny, but he's being serious. You know what I mean? I'm laughing about it. And I was like, okay, I'll go over, Sabu. It won't be an issue. He was like, oh, man. I was like, our match is like 14 seconds long. It won't take long to talk it over. So I go over, do the thing with Hogan and whatever that was with, I walk over and Hogan this isn't a do it Sabu, except Sabu's screaming, Stevie, get back. He's ruining the entire take and everything, which I love. That's why I probably didn't make the TV show. I wish it did. Walked up to Hogan. I go, hey, Hulk. He goes, hey, brother, Hulk Hogan. I was like, I'm Stevie Richards, but we've met like 10 times. He was like, okay, brother. And the cameras are doing you know what I mean? Trying to do the close-ups, and then a close-up on Brunk, a close-up on him. I turn around to walk away, and he goes, brother! And I was like, what? And he goes, she's looking at your butt. Camera on me, camera on, like, you know what I mean? Doing the close-ups. Sabu's like, stop effing around, come back over, screaming as the cameras are doing the thing. Walk over, and he goes, what's going on over there? And I'm like, oh, Hogan knows best or whatever. He goes, he don't know shit. So we talked the match over, and that was the end of it. But it was funny because I'll go back. The exact quote was, it's so, because he didn't know who she was, but he knew who I was. And she walked up with the clipboard, and she goes, I'm what Hogan knows best. And he was like, get the F out of here. And I'm like, Sabu, they're what Hogan knows best. And he goes, oh, like it was the same exact thing. But because I said it, I was like, oh, all right, I'll go over there. So it was just kind of funny. And I was trying to get him. He wouldn't do it. And this is Sabu's sense of humor. Just so you know. He's serious, but it's so funny. But he's kind of joking. And I was like, hey, wouldn't it be great if like you and I did the Mega Powers handshake like right in front of Hogan? He's like, well, we're not the Mega Powers. I was like, I know. But what if we just do it like, come on, dude. He goes, we're not the Mega Powers. And he goes, well, who's Hogan and who's Savage? I was like, you can be whoever you want. Let's just do the handshake. He goes, all right, no. I'll be Hogan. I want to be Savage. Savage is cooler. He's saying it as loud as he can. Hogan hears. He's only about 10 feet away. So it's just funny. Like that, little things like that where I would not mess with him, but just kind of like trying to get him to goof off a little bit. But he would be so serious, but it would come off even goofier than me messing around. And I would just get a big laugh out of it.
Was the clipboard that you had to sign waiver kind of thing?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I signed the waiver and then whatever happened with that. But that's just a good memory of like, that's what the wrestling business is. You're just there to kind of goof off, have a good time. You go out there, you're serious, you beat each other up. And it's supposed to be pretty light back there. That's kind of why with WWE, and he sensed it too. He's like, man, nobody wants to have any fun. This isn't supposed to be fun. We're making money doing this. So he kind of got it.
When did it stop being fun? Was it ever fun in WWE? I know this is on a slight tangent, but
when I first got there, guys were playing video games. Things were happening. It was the Attitude Era, the tail end of it, and then right the center ruined all that. I guess it's my fault the video games got banned too. Just blame it on me from that point on. So yeah, I mean with Sabu though, yeah, I guess it was kind of fun because the new ECW was coming back. Well, like we talked about in the new ECW episode. We knew like pretty early on, this is going to be just your standard WWE atmosphere. So yeah, you try to have fun with it. The less fun you have with what they're putting on you, you have more fun just trying to say, let's do the Mega Powers handshake. You're trying to cope with all the other BS by forcing yourself to have fun with something. And he was really good for that.
Okay then, so talk more. We've talked about Sabu, sort of more of the character and what he's like as a person, but what was Sabu like to wrestle? I know people, long-time listeners of the show, will know the story because you mentioned it once or twice over the thing. But the Three Punches story, and it seems to be because I heard Lance Storm say it, and it was verbatim what you've said. So apparently, you must have done this with everybody. So what is it? What happened?
I did pretty much. I mean, that's when you played that. I thought it was an AI version of me with a different voice because you said I'm working on something for tomorrow, and then you sent me. Yeah, you sent me that. I was like, are you like cloning my voice to a different voice or a quote that I did? Because it was literally verbatim of the 1 2 sorry thing. He just always did that. 1 2 sorry. So sometimes it'd be 1 2 powder. Not in a way, because it never hurt. It would just catch you like a little bit here, a little bit here. It was never anything that would like where you would literally see stars or anything, but it was just so funny of literally, it wouldn't be him saying 1 2 then sorry, but it would be just the third one would be sorry. So it's myself, Lance, I think Dreamer, the other people knew about 1 2 sorry. So it was just awesome, to do that. So I think he did a couple on was it the ECW TV match we have? We'll watch along on Patreon, but I think he did 1 2 sorry there as well. And I had to cover up because I started laughing after I took the bump. There was something in there when he hit me with something and went sorry, and it just made me. I lost it. And the camera hopefully didn't pick it up. Hopefully the camera did pick it up now. Not at the time because I would have got heat. Speaking of which, one story that we didn't touch on that I want to, that kind of piggybacks on the Mega Power handshake story and Hogan Knows Best. I think it was that weekend because it was Texas once again, a small town in Texas. And I was wrestling Sandman in a Singapore cane match. And we're backstage and Hack had started to lighten up, hit people in the back, do whatever, not really swing for the fences across your nose or anything. But he came up to me and was like, yo, Stevie, when you get that cane, just lay into me, hit me with everything you got. And Sabu came up and his hands on my chest. He goes, no, he doesn't mean it. He doesn't mean it. And I was like, well, he's like, I don't listen to him. I can take it. Just him. He was like, no, he can't. Just, he doesn't mean it. Don't. He was like, shut up, Sabu. Just hit me with the cane as hard as you can. So there's actually video that we can do a little watch along for Patreon, or we can put it up here to show it. And basically, it's a clip of me. I got the cane and I hit him and he verbally, he can't hear it. He's like, what the F? And I'm following him outside and he told me to just keep on me the whole time, running around, and I'm hitting him, and I'm not like hitting him sideways like baseball swings or anything, but I'm laying into him, and in the finish, he was as light as possible, like stomach shot, back shot, whatever. And he gets to the back, and Hack's like, Jesus Christ! Like as he comes through the curtain, and Sabu is laughing. I come back, Sabu is doubled over, almost to the floor, crying, laughing. He's like, oh my God, you were just, I was like, I wasn't trying to hurt him because you were chasing him. He didn't know that like Hack had told me to. He's like, oh my God, he was running from you. You just kept chasing him. He goes, I told you didn't mean it. He just kept like, Sabu, we were in the car. He couldn't stop laughing about that. He thought it was the funniest thing because he's the one that told me. I was like, well, was he mad when he came up to me, Hack hugged me, big Hack hug, and he was, oh, thanks, man. Oh my God, you're killing me with that cane. And Sabu, because he was, I told you, he didn't mean it. He didn't mean it. So in the car, we would just be driving, and he would just start laughing. He was like, he came through that curtain, and he was just like, Jesus Christ. And he was like, we're all laughing. So it was just funny that like, him interacting with the calling of the match and everything, then it happening, and he was literally in tears, crying, like laughing about it. I was like, wrestlers are crazy. What we think is funny.
Huntsville, Texas. Attendance 550.
Yeah.
Why even in Texas for an ECW house?
Well, we did the smaller towns, the smaller buildings. That's what the brand was supposed to be about. Was Racine, Wisconsin. I think was the first one where I worked I think I worked Al Snow on that, and on that loop, I also worked Brad Armstrong, that first loop of ECW. So it was supposed to be smaller buildings. TVs were supposed to be smaller buildings as well.
Yeah, they did it once. And we saw how that went. That's a future episode, by the way. Take a drink. Episode 8 of ECW on Sci-Fi. So, Sabu, highly talented at various forms of wrestling, not just high flying, I think would be fair to say. But he was also like a really good brawler, a really sound mat technician. How was he just as far as like the basics, the fundamentals? Right, not like triple moonsaults or anything, but lockups and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, everything was solid. I'm sure with Sheik training him, he's still, like you said, before he even touched the ring or got inside the ring for 7 months, he was doing everything else to instill that discipline. So there's no doubt that he was trained to basically have all the fundamentals as well, because you still have to know how to wrestle. I remember putting me in holds and stuff, and I was so green I didn't even know how to get out of them, especially during the house party match. But yeah, he would definitely be able to wrestle. He couldn't just... Think about it. He's in the ring with Cena. He's in the ring with Kurt Angle. He's in the ring with a bunch of people that are considered to be wrestlers. From one, you can consider Cena not to be as good as Kurt or any of that other stuff, but he would hang with different styles. And like I said, he could morph. He'd do his stuff, but he would still morph whatever match he could or his style into your style as well. So, and I'd wrestled him. It couldn't be just triple jump moonsaults and all this table stuff. You had to wrestle in the new ECW especially, and he could definitely hold his own. He was really good. I think of course, you have to do some of it, but why not give the people what they want and be that special attraction at the same time? He had a good how should I say, a good mix of both to where he didn't feel like he was deficient in one or the other.
Was he a tough guy? Because we've all seen that clip where someone grabs his turban or whatever, and he just immediately just turns around, punches him in the face, and just carries on walking.
Yeah, that sounds like Sabu.
Did he get in a lot of fights?
No, not that I know of. I mean, sometimes with the fans, he's a little wild. I'm sure he beat a few Japanese fans up, but they seem to love that. But no, I mean, everybody in the business to some extent has to have some toughness. So where he ranks, I'm not sure because I've never heard of real Sabu fights or anything. But I would say based on just looking at his body and the scars and what he fought through right up until that last match with Joey Janela, yeah, he's definitely a breed apart from even your regular tough guy because he's like a Mick Foley. What can you do to hurt this guy to stop him? That's the way I look at it.
Right, let's talk about planning matches with Sabu then. I've heard that there wasn't, with all the, intricate stuff that he would do in a lot of matches, I've heard that he didn't actually plan that much out. So how would a skull session between you two go as far as putting out a 10-minute match or something? The
way it should go today, bullet points, feeling the crowd, and not having to be like, you got to be in this exact corner to do this, unless it's the finish where you have a limited amount of cameras like in ECW, which we still didn't really frame it out to be like, we got to on this side. The cameras would find us, which should be what the wrestlers should worry about, doing the thing and let the cameras find you. It was easy. I mean, in obviously the House Party 96 match, I was so nervous, beyond nervous, and he carried me through that entire match. But if I remember correctly, the dive on Meaning, myself, I saw throw a chair into you, you can dive on us, then I'm all yours. And then it was fighting back and forth. And then it was just really, he said, oh, maybe I'm going to do this thing where I'll do a leg drop as you're across the ropes. I'll set you up for it. Then it was basically the super kick spot after the corner to corner spot, and then the finish. Literally everything else was just what it was. It was just a fight. And you knew what Sabu did anyway. You had to know. And I was very limited. He knew what I could do. So it was just kind of trying to figure out. If he set a table up and it wasn't time to go through the table, he would say, move so he could take the bump, cut me off. These very little one-spot things, and then you had to carry your end of it, which for some of it, there was some dead time in that house party match because I was green. I don't want to take advantage or try to eat him up. But then again, I should have known enough that he wasn't going to let me eat him up anyway, so he'd fight back every bit as much as he expected me. Nah, he's easy. And then new ECW, Saturday Night's Main Event was just us kind of BSing back and forth, but there was nothing to call because the only reason we called that match and then the TV match after that was basically the agent writing it down. It wasn't because we needed to call every single spot.
When Sabu was wrestling, whether it was you or anybody else, was it always, did you notice like a basic structure to his matches, or would he just occasionally just do something completely unpredictable?
Well, the structure was based on who he was working. A lot, hell, I used to kind of workshop my matches. So obviously the Big Show match is going to be different than the match with me. The Kurt Angle match is going to be different than the match with John Cena. But then Sabu inserts his move set into that, and there you have the match. But really, a lot of it was working around that guy, and I think that's why he could work a Pete Dunne in 2015, why he could work a Penta, a Ray Phoenix, and all that stuff, because he understood what he needed to do to get their stuff over, and he knew his stuff would be there, because everybody knows what Sabu does. You just don't know when he's going to do it. That's the part that was tricky. I didn't know. You're talking about actual match structure with Sabu. It wasn't a 5 moves of doom where you had the 5 knuckle shuffle into something, the different moves that went into it, the Bret Hart thing, the tried and true 5 moves that led up to the finish, or 4 moves up to the 5th. Sabu would mix it up. So you wouldn't get like the Arabian Face Buster maybe at the end, but you might get it somewhere in the middle. You might not get the triple jump moonsault in a match at all, or you might get it in early in the match or towards right before the finish. He knew how to weave the same moves into all these different matches. I can't quite put it in the words, but I'm just thinking about it. I was like, I can't think of a match where Sabu did move A, B, C, D into really even what was Sabu's finish. Sometimes the flipping Arabian Face Buster off the top rope, sometimes the camel clutch, sometimes he'd spike people, I think, and then they would get DQ'd. I mean, you think about it, Sabu didn't really have a finish. That's amazing.
Do you know, just you talking then, it just reminds me, a lot of fans these days are using the word moveset. Man, what a great moveset that wrestler's got. I think Sabu was one of the very first wrestlers where people would have said, what a moveset that guy has. And he always constantly seemed to bring new stuff, or at least over the ECW run. He would occasionally debut something brand new, where it'd be like an Atomic Arabian Facebuster or something like that.
Yeah. Also, the thing with Ray, we're going to watch it, is the, on the ropes and DDTing through the table. And somehow making it safer than an actual DDT in the ring.
So, we're going to talk about psychology and working the crowd then. So, as I say, he didn't play to the crowd that much, but was it just brand so solid that he didn't have to?
Well, he did. This.
He did that, but I'm saying, he wasn't like hard pantomiming and stomping the mat or anything like that. I mean, he didn't need to.
No, he didn't need to, but just all you need is one. It's like Rob. Rob does his thing. Why do you need more than one thing? The moves that you take a look at Sabu, it speaks for itself before he even does a move. That's why opening his mouth, show don't tell. That's why WWE made a big mistake trying to get him to talk. All you got to do is just pan up and down his front and his back and his face and see all the scars. And you're instantly like, what happened to this guy? And why nobody can see? If nobody could stop him before, even with all those scars, who's going to stop him now? That's the kind of like way to present him.
Someone suggested on the Patreon that we watch Dean Malenko and Rey Mysterio in Rey's debut. And you sent that to me, and I said, okay, I'll add it to the list. And I remember that match as being very slow in the beginning, and you build up to the big stuff. I think Sabu, for most people, is almost like a highlight reel wrestler. He's done all these incredible things and, death-defying stunts, etc. But I don't think he ever lost the ability to always structure a match. The story came first, and then, it would build. He wouldn't just break out something. I mean, I'm sure he would, to kickstart a match off quickly. But he wouldn't. The matches in general with Sabu, they would build still. There would always be a story rather than moves for moves' sake.
Yeah, even if he had 20 moves, if you're just going to do your highlight reel with no psychology, no story, and not trying to transition, what do you got, a 4-minute match, maybe 5 at the most if the person's even selling. But he stretches out. A lot of his matches are minimum 8-10 minutes long. A lot of them are 15, 20, even 30 minutes long. So you gotta know how to work and spread it out and figure out where it goes. And also have the ability to call audibles. He would call a lot of spots where move, and he would take himself out to settle it down or give you the advantage to get the heat. Think about that. You didn't need to cut Sabu off, because the beauty about Sabu is he could cut himself off for the heat.
Would you? I mean, I know you wrestled him when you were very young, and later on in 2006, and also you tagged with him in TNA in 2010, I believe, as well. Was he always the ring general?
Well, I defer to him, but he wouldn't play it like he knew everything. He wouldn't play it like, I'm the leader of this and we got to do this. He was very much a utility guy. He was very much, I think, once again, when you call a match and you put it together, especially when we had to put it together against Fortune, it was a nightmare half the time with those guys trying to get their stuff in all the time. So it was a fight that I personally didn't want to fight, because it's all stupid if you're trying to get fake moves in for no good reason. And Sabu, I think, had the same attitude. No filter, no BS, no politics. Politics and BS and filters go in a lot when you're trying to call a match with multiple people in it. It's a political minefield, especially with guys that don't have psychology, that just want to get their stuff in. I think Sabu at that point was just like, I'm here, I'm getting paid, just don't hurt me. And I can kind of blend into this.
So there's a theory out there, I don't know if he's ever said this to you or you've ever heard of this, is that he would botch moves on purpose, or at least he would claim to botch moves on purpose, because it would make everything look more difficult and he didn't want to look too perfect. Is that something you've heard of?
Yeah, absolutely heard it and surmised it by watching it. He's way too coordinated. He has too much balance. He knows what he's doing. He's done these moves a million times. So even like when, he would purposely, I think, and this is just my guess, get up on the ropes and then kind of lose his balance a little bit and then do the move, and the person would move, giving him time to sell or see that he's trying to jump on him. Yeah, I think Sabu, there'd be times, obviously, if it happened, he would make it a part of the match where it wasn't like quite, or maybe it started out that way. He's like, oh, wait a minute, I can make it look much more difficult like this, or I can give myself that extra 5 seconds to not prostitute my dive or table spot to give them a chance to move. They have a reason to move because I needed that extra 5 to 10 seconds to get back into it. He never said it, but especially in the new ECW, I was like smart enough to look at it and go, yeah, but I think some people in the office weren't smart enough and thought he was botching them and he was losing a step. And some of the biggest marks are in the office. I'm sorry. Because, and I think Sabu deep down is like, if you're not smart enough to figure out like how I'm working, then I'm not gonna clue you into it. That's the mystique of Sabu too. Yeah. You just didn't. He's gone, and we still are like, did he mean to do it or not do it? So that's awesome.
We have to talk about some of the injuries. How can we not? I don't think you were with the company when Born to be Wired happened with Terry Funk. I think that might have been Terry Funk's last match in ECW. Like, I don't know, September or October.
Was that the one where they had to do the title switch and then do the switch after that?
They had just had to stop the match. Because I think it was Terry or Sabu was just like too wrapped up that they couldn't even continue.
Yeah, but didn't Sabu say pin me and then they had to do another belt switch? We talked about that a couple episodes.
Was that what they did?
You had told me that.
No, that would have been in like 93. I think they did some like belt switch. This was the one where I think just Terry Funk just couldn't continue.
Oh, are you talking about, I think the night the line was crossed with him, Shane, and Terry Funk.
Yeah, that was 94.
Yeah, that was before. Yeah. That was Eastern Championship Wrestling. I'm sorry, I'm mixing it up. But no, I do remember seeing that. I was not there, but I remember seeing it. I remember he's legendary for, I think, the urban legend. People don't believe it today that he literally just had them tape up his arm. His bicep was completely exposed, and he continued the match.
Nearly a foot long gash in his arm there that he then taped up. I mean, I think I've seen him tape up his own head once.
No, he's the super
I mean,
glue. He's the super glue king. He super glued a cut on my head once.
Did he really?
Yeah. Definitely. I would have had him sign it too if it was later in my career.
Doesn't it burn? Super glue's really hot.
Yeah, it wasn't fun. He laughed. I was like, he caused me a little pain, but he would just super glue. I'd see him super gluing after like cutting his arm because he would do the arm thing sometimes too, I think. So yeah, he would put super glue if it was too deep.
I've heard this is like, he's one of the few people who would gig his ear, which always makes me go, oh, man. I mean, it's one thing to do your forehead or even your arm or something, but your ear?
I never heard of that, but I believe it. And then, like I said before, him and people like him and Terry Funk and even probably Mick Foley developed so much scar tissue in certain places, you could hardway them pretty easily. So I have no doubt that happened a few times.
One more thing about some of the more extreme aspects. I always found it funny that when I think I last interviewed him, I guess, all the things he's done, with fire and C4 explosions and barbed wire and glass and stuff like that, refused to work with thumbtacks. So, nope, too weird, don't like it.
Well, I got that on him, sissy.
I know. Or tasers.
Yeah, use the
Fake
real
tasers.
one. The fake ones hurt worse. They burn you. No, that's so weird. If he was around, I would have. Did you ask him why?
Yeah, it's probably on the YouTube channel, and I can't remember the answer. But he just said no, just never fancied it. It just freaked me out.
And I assumed that tacks were something he did more than all the other stuff that you just mentioned, the fire and everything, because it's obviously. Did he ever do glass?
He must have done. Oh, do you know when he did glass? I know for a fact is that he didn't take it. I think he was trying to smash a glass beer bottle over Mick Foley's head. So I know at least he's worked with glass. I don't know if he's taken a bump in glass.
Yeah. He would have been the one that pointed out that you need a different shade of glass at the Wembley Stadium show that you were talking about so you can see it.
God, that really bugged me.
He has that. But it would have bugged him. He has that kind of attention to detail as well.
Do you know what, right? I'm going to bring this up. I forgot to write this down. He did an interview years ago. It must have been a U shoot, right? And Sean Oliver, I think it really annoyed me the way he read the question out. Because he was like, oh, this Mark wants to know this question. And it was a guy who wrote in and said, Sabu, why do you always hook the leg when you pin? You never don't hook the leg. And like Sean was like read it in a condescending way. And then Sabu gave like a 4-minute answer about the psychology of why he hooked the leg. And it's like, that was the best question that was sent in. Because unlike most wrestlers who do these interviews, and I would lump you in with the Sabus of the world in professional wrestling, is that one, there's a reason, and two, he really cared about that reason and the psychology of why he does that. And, I think that's great.
Yeah, it's very strange because that's one of the most intelligent wrestling questions that you could ever get about something so minute but not minute. And I think Sabu's answer would be along the lines of mine. It depends on who you're against, but you want to make a habit out of doing that all the time. But if the guy is bigger than you, and especially me, my thing would be to cover guys back to chest because I'm so skinny and there'd be space just covering because I'm not a thick guy. And the hooking of the leg while my back was against their chest and pushing down on my feet makes it look like I'm really pressing against them to keep the shoulders on the mat. And the leg hook is definitely a big deal. Plus, hooking the leg shows people. Now, a lot of guys don't hook the leg. I'm sure Sabu, here's a 4-minute answer to Sabu's answer. Sabu probably said a lot of guys don't hook the leg, and the fans already know it's not the finish until you hook the leg. But if you keep hooked the leg, even for a 1 count, barely a 1 count, 1.5, 2, 2.5, now they're building up anticipation that he could win because he's hooking the leg and getting closer and closer and closer and closer, and then hooking 2 legs with your back to chest, like I tried to do later in the matches on false finish or actual finishes, make it. That's awesome. That's like, it's funny, that kind of Sabu answer, it reminds me of, that warms my heart because I would love for him to be here, and now it makes me miss him even more because I would love to ask him questions like that and never took advantage fully of that. But it reminds me of Bill Belichick when someone asked him about a long snapper. He gave the history of long snappers. Like that's a true student of the game. So good on you, Sabu.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It was a great answer as well. I'm sure I've got it somewhere that I could send it to you. Were there any other minute things that Sabu paid attention to that most wrestlers didn't, or is that too hard a question to sort of pin down because they were so minute that you wouldn't notice?
Everything from the entrance, everything from the entrance into the arena, entrance into the ring, uh, his surroundings. Obviously, Sabu had to be very aware of the ring and especially outside the ring, the spacing between the guardrail and the apron, where the table's going to go, where the cameras are. Everything was minute detail. Everything was about nuance and detail to Sabu. Everything was thought out. And then it becomes second nature because if you're wrestling in the ECW arena every month, you kind of know the circumference around the outside, you know where you're going, everything. But when you get to a new building, I would watch Sabu and I would assume he was kind of getting a lay of the land of where we're going to go in the match, what they're going to do. And oh, it's a lot wider here than here. And I'm sure with that Joey Janela match, he was looking and saying, we should put the barbed wire, bed or whatever it's called on this side. He probably had a hand in placing those things everywhere they needed to be.
When you wrestled him in 2006, when you wrestled with him in 2010, obviously his body's breaking down over the years. He's put himself through a heck of a lot, inside and outside the ring at the same time. Was there a noticeable difference in how he moved over the years?
No.
At least with you.
No, not really. The biggest difference was he shaved his head, but then it grew back pretty quick. Your assumption is something medical. I thought it was just genetics. No, he didn't lose a step. And of course, you're factored in with a group. In an 8-man tag or other tag matches and stuff, he could do a little bit more and rest between those things. So I think he gave his body a little bit of a break, but then again, when he did whatever he did, he threw everything into it, his body being one thing. So no, I didn't see a slowdown except for the fact, obviously, he was in pain in the back, but we were all used to seeing that no matter what. He was one of those guys that, like, say what you will. I mean, the scars, I didn't know about getting shot in the face as a kid and the scars on his face or losing his teeth, getting him knocked out with getting shot. But Sabu was somebody that essentially almost looked the same right up until his last match at 60. Talking about facially, body-wise, there's different levels of health and fitness and injury, but Sabu's always looked the same if you think about it.
Did he, apart from a straight punch here and there, which didn't really hurt you, but was he pretty darn safe in the ring? Would you say? Was he bigger danger to himself than everyone else?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say for what Sabu did, he was probably one of the safest workers I've ever been in the ring with because the danger factor was so high, and you came out of it relatively unscathed. The only time I ever got hurt to a point where it was a long-term injury was that story I told about Philadelphia, July 4th week, when he put me through the table face first with the Arabian facebuster, and something was wrong. I got some splinters in my eye, and I partially tore this bicep. But he didn't touch me. It was just the ergonomics of the way I was on the table that did it. Like he didn't drop his ass on the back of my head and knock me out. That's never happened. Now, when he would drop that leg, sometimes, or the Arabian, not the Arabian face punch, but his actual body, that's one of the things where he's a solid piece of muscle. There's no fat on the guy, and you're getting hit. It felt like a baseball bat was landing across my chest, but he wasn't landing on my face or anything. He's just like, wow, this dude's like, he's solid. Even picking him up and trying to move him, he's light in a way where he'll go where you are, but you're handling somebody. I'm like, dude, what do you do for your workouts? I would ask him that during the match because it's just like he was just naturally. I'm sure the Sheik looked like a naturally like a Dick the Bruiser type. Like he's a big dude, a thick dude, but it's just like he's a piece of meat that's just like solid.
Very quickly, did he ever ask you permission? Oh, can I use the table in this match beforehand? Or was it just like, whatever's going to happen is going to happen?
Well, he would ask me probably, are you okay? Are you hurt? Or is there anything bothering you? Those kinds of courtesy things. I don't ever recall him. Now, when I worked him, more times than not, it's a very limited amount. It would be, let's put do you mind if we put the table spot here? I would call the table spot to him, or what do you feel? Well, how's your body? What do you want to do as far as table or whatever? Are you saying I'm getting old? No, I'm not saying you're getting old, Sabu. Stop. So, but yeah, I more times than not, I would kind of volunteer. So it wouldn't be like, do you mind if you do this or that? But obviously, if I said, man, this part of my body's kind of hurting, he was like, okay, I'll stay away from it. So he was definitely somebody that wouldn't be like, this is what, because if you're uncomfortable taking a move, he's smart enough to know you're going to bet, you're going to shy away, you're going to do whatever. So I think it never really came down to that. It was so weird. That's a good question. It was always very cooperative. It never felt like he was asking me or I was like resisting anything.
Just before we wrap this up, are there any moves, I'm sure there are quite a lot, that you can definitively say, I saw Sabu do that first or he invented it?
Well, anything to do at a table. Anything to do at a table. Anything athletic like a move to do at a chair, triple jump moonsault. As a matter of fact, the move he did where he does the Hardy Boys thing before the Hardy Boys did it off the chair, where Matt and Jeff would do it off the back of Matt, Jeff would hit it. Sabu's the innovator of that, as far as I remember. He's been doing that since like the Hardy Boys weren't even local enhancement talent at the point that Sabu was doing all this stuff. So table stuff, I would assume like floor bumps before Mick Foley ever did it. Fire, barbed wire, anything unique, hardcore, violent, and acrobatic. I would say Sabu is the innovator. He's the innovator of violence. It's not Dreamer. It's Sabu.
Did you see that fire match where they set the ropes on fire and then they all got out within like 30 seconds?
No, I didn't. Which match was this?
Oh, FMW. Some FMW nonsense. They soaked towels like with kerosene, wrapped them around, I don't know if they're the ropes or barbed wire, I can't remember. But like the entire ring was just engulfed in flame. It wasn't like an Inferno match where it's controlled. This thing was out of control within seconds. And they all ran out of the ring under the bottom rope in different directions because it was just like too intense.
I did hear about that. I haven't seen it, but I heard that story. Yeah.
It is a complete disaster. It really is. There's also a match out there where Sabu, I can't remember if he's tagging with or facing against a boxer who was like, I can't remember if he said like he was like already punch drunk and, you know, a bit slow, and I can't remember who it was, but it was like 92 or 93 or something like that.
Was it Japan
he was like
as well?
A well-known guy. In Japan as well, FMW, yeah. He wasn't like Riddick Bowe or someone. I think it was like someone from the 80s.
Was it Buster Douglas?
No. It's going to bug me now.
Or Spinks.
Anyway.
Like Leon Spinks?
Maybe it was
or
Leon
Michael
Spinks.
Yeah, one of the two.
Right. Yeah, I think it was the guy who Mike Tyson knocked out in 90 seconds to
I remember that fight. I
believe
believe that. Yeah, it was one of the Spinks, right? I think
I think it was Leon Spinks, I'll guess. Right, okay, so this is something you sent me, Stevie, about Sabu's book. And I hadn't read Sabu's book, but you sent me a page from it, and I thought it was really funny. Which once again is something else I completely respect about Sabu, because dare I say, if I ever wrote a book myself, I'd do the same thing. And it was just a page of FUs of people he just hated in the wrestling business, and he just wanted to make a mention of it. So I really enjoyed that. Anyway,
you told me to do that in my book.
You should do. Damn, man, absolutely. I'll do it. I'll never do a book. Anyway, Sabu wrote a list of a few different people. I'm going to save one till the end, because I want you to talk about this person specifically. But the first one he mentions is Kurt Angle. Now, I actually went back in the book, found out what the beef was. So it's the first time they met, or in WWE, the first time we met. Basically, Kurt was pretty darn disrespectful the way that Sabu told it. And what Sabu said was, to Kurt Angle, because I may have to wrestle you again one day, I won't hit you with a stiff FU, but maybe something just a little underneath that, and more professional. You know, like a, you, sir, I could do without. And then we skip this one, we'll save that to the end. The second one, Koji Kanemoto and his no-selling BS, FU, and your no-selling BS. And then Jim Ross, I say FU, for treating the Sheik like trash and ripping him off. You still owe him money, you something. Feel free to PayPal me the $150,000 or whatever it is at your early convenience, prick. Now, This is in regards to Jim Ross and the NWA made a deal with the Sheik to appear at a Detroit show. They said they paid him a fee, and then anything above $40,000 or $50,000 or whatever it was in the house, Sheik would get 50%. NWA didn't think he'd bring in any money at all. They got a huge house, and of course the Sheik was not compensated, as is the story in the book. To Ric Flair, and to, even though I may need him one day, Johnny the Dickhead Ace, F you both for your political BS. I would also like to add Jerry Lawler, Bill Dundee, and Michael Hayes to this list too, just because you all really suck. And
hey,
to Vince
what's
McMahon.
the problem, Sabu? I'm your friend. You got a job for life here. What are you talking about?
If only Sabu was here so I could ask him the Johnny Ace story. But anyway, to Vince McMahon, believe it or not, I won't say F you to Vince because you never really said anything to my face that wasn't actually not somewhat professional. You've done a lot for the business that I love and given a lot of my friends work. So for all this, I do have respect for you. I will say this, though. You always shook my hand like a short bus meathead, almost pulling my shoulder right out the socket. So there you go. But let's get to the one.
By the way, Vince did act unprofessionally on camera, on TV, in the new ECW.
No.
The famous thing, walking down the this is when Mr. McMahon was a menace. Before even Do-Rag was even worse. Do-Rag Vince, but before that, he walked down the aisle, or should I say the hallway in the backstage area. Sabu was there. He turns to his left, looks, he's got his security. He goes, I thought I was in whatever town. It looks like I'm in Afghanistan. And we have a member of the Taliban right here. Yeah. So...
Oh, amazing. He was a menace.
If Sabu were here and he had said that live, I would have corrected him and he would have gotten sore. He goes, I forgot about that. He would have got angry. And I would have just threw the grenade in the room and walked away.
Oh, was he wound up at the time about that? Do you remember? Did he mention that to you?
He didn't mention it, but I didn't even know the promo existed because I wasn't watching ECW at the time. Even though I was with
You and most people, in fairness. Right, I saved this one till the end, and you know why, because it regards a friend of yours. It says, to Test, I would like to send a really big FU shout-out beyond the grave to a bastard who no-sold like an a-hole and always tattled like a baby. So, in the interview with me, the second one maybe, he said that in the new ECW, Test hurt him so badly that even Sabu was complaining. So if you're hurting Sabu, then you're hurting basically one of the toughest people on the roster. And Sabu thought that people had got into Test's head about having to be an ECW locker room leader and also to tighten up his work to the nth degree that he was killing everybody at this time. I wanted to bring this up to you because you were friends with Test for quite a number of years. Does this ring true with you?
Yeah, I do remember this. I remember that the Office, like I said, some of the biggest marks are in the Office. They didn't get that the ECW guys were working back in the day. So they were doing things about working strong style, being stiffer, making it look better. Obviously, making it look better is not hitting somebody harder because they will not sell. And there was something about Test when he was there, and he was definitely over as a heel. He had a great look. He added a lot to the brand. But there's also the thing about being in the WWE bubble of the wrestling bubble. And now you got Sabu coming in and other people. And Test was not somebody I think that was even familiar with the original ECW much. So it's just a clash of generations, a clash of ideas, a clash of maybe respect or Test being, it's like Sabu being Sabu. Could be taken as being aloof, being an introvert, being like thinking he's better than everybody else. Test can be a loudmouth bully to some people. But you have to take them all and the personalities, and Test was so over the top and loud, and his character on TV was kind of like what it was backstage, but he didn't mean any harm by it. But definitely there was probably some people getting in Test's head because remember, Test was the WWE like prodigy at one point when he first came in, and then it was like a roller coaster ride. Then, just like Kurt Angle, I'm sure Test thought he was demoted by being put in the ECW. So there's probably some frustration, the Office egging him on a little bit, and him trying to get back to the, quote, main roster of WWE. Some of this I witnessed, some of this I heard, and some of it is speculation, but I would trust Sabu that Sabu had his ear to the ground. Paul probably clued him in, and maybe Test even told him straight up, you know, I'm gonna work ECW style, brother. And Sabu's like, what is that? You know, that's my guess. I like both guys, but I can see how both guys too, with their personalities, could be misinterpreted to other people. And then that's wrestling.
You were wrestling Test a ton in like 2003, 2004.
Oh, he hit me with a boot so hard on a house show, my boot saw came off. I bumped so hard. My boot literally, the saw flew in. It was in Salisbury, Maryland, and it flew into the fourth row, and then the fan gave it back to me after the show.
Oh, aha. We haven't done that yet.
Aha. I mean, but Test stuff was there, man. That boot killed me. Like, I'm sure I was just huge. So am I tougher than Sabu? No. It's just he was probably hitting Sabu harder than me.
I remember when Test came back to ECW, because I think he'd been let go for a while and then he came back.
Aha. Aha.
I remember when Test came back. See, I know he was let go for, I don't know what the reason was, but he came back after a while. He was cut up at that point. He was shredded at that point. So, I mean, if nothing else, he was taking physicality seriously in all different interpretations of that. But
I was still the most drug tested wrestler on the roster.
Mm-hmm. You should have just got Test to switch samples with you. I mean, if you were the tested one, just switch samples with him and then just send in tests.
Maybe they just thought because his name was Test, he didn't need to be tested. He was already a test. Wow, that's something right there.
Right, okay, that's been a theory for ages because it's like, test, this is a mic test, because he was meant to be the roadie for like Motley Crue when he was brought in. That was called Test. Mm-hmm. Was the real joke that it was short for testosterone?
You know what? I can guess, knowing Vince McMahon and which brain he was working off of, possibly. Everything in wrestling seems to be a rib, and if it draws money, that's even funnier.
But one thing to mention, because you mentioned Test a few times, good dude, though.
I always thought he was a good dude. This is the beauty of wrestling conventions after you're out of the wrestling bubble, after you're out of WWE. I talked about China. It was extremely difficult to work with China, but outside of wrestling and the poisoned environment in the bubble, everybody seems to be pretty decent. Some people are still in the bubble mentally and still jerks or whatever. But Test, like when you got paid, I think the thing with Test is, and just like anybody else, if you don't sell for it and you don't look like it bothers you, you give it back to them or whatever in a friendly way, it just kind of levels off. You have to understand that's kind of what I always loved about the business. It could be frustrating at times, but just all these different personalities that you have to navigate. Some are negative, some are positive. Some of the negative ones, you have to change your perspective to look at it more positively, or else you're always going to be mad. That's the way I looked at it.
Now, speaking of receiving moves that, whether it's a test boot or something else, could injure you more than other things. I mean, it's a terrible segue. I'm sorry. I'm not even going to redo it, though. Look, we're going to be doing What Went Wrong. This is, according to Sabu's own words, the move that basically spiraled him into drug addiction in the first place. And goodness me, I had to turn bright then. I've got a reflection of all the stuff. This is the move that sent Sabu basically into becoming a drug addict, into becoming reliant on pain pills, and it's a match from ECW. I believe it's November to Remember 1994, before there were pay-per-views in ECW, of course, where he is wrestling Chris Benoit. I have quotes to back up what Sabu thought went wrong here, but Stevie, over to you. This is a tough one to watch, I realise, especially with someone else who's had a broken neck. What went wrong?
Well, thank you, James. Yeah, it's very, very tough to watch, but obviously tougher for Sabu because he actually took the move. And just a little bit of an Easter egg here. This is the birth of Crippler Chris Benoit, who he was known as Crippler from this point on. But the birth of that nickname comes from this specific move right here, where he was trying to pick him up. It looked like almost like the Taz superplex when he grabs the leg and throws back like a T-bone type style thing, but it definitely, I think, just kind of did not. Oh, so it's like more like a hook into a Northern Lights into a backdrop style bump, but he did not get Sabu over. I'll go slow-mo here. I mean, it's pretty much what it is. What you see that it is, that he threw him up in the air, but he didn't clear, went too far straight up in the air. Whose fault is it? My assumption is that Sabu thought that maybe Benoit was going to fall back with him. In other words, the thing that makes you clear and land flat on the mat is Benoit taking a back bump like a Northern Lights, or just a release belly to belly style, even though he grabbed the leg and hooked under his arm. When he goes up, usually Benoit should bump with him and guide him, and then Sabu can go all the way and land like that. But of course, that didn't happen. Yeah, you can see him on the back right there on the outside. And for 911, Paul to check on him right away, knew something had gone wrong. So that's one angle right there. Benoit, you can tell he looks a little confused by it. I guess Sabu was supposed to stay in the ring. That's just my guess. And just looking, that might be when Paul clued him in. Hey, go, like, do something. He's hurt or whatever. So we'll go to the second angle here and see what we have. All right, so the quality is a little bit worse on this, but this is the one they showed on ECW TV over and over and over again to really cement the fact of crippler Chris Benoit, Sabu's injury, and furthering it. They did make a positive out of a huge negative. So hearing that Sabu, this is the moment that got him addicted and changed the course of his career and his life completely, instantly with this move, I really don't. Right there. I mean, what can you say? Even though he's getting his arm and his hand down, it's just his body. Now here too, I wonder if he had landed. Well, that's rough. Right there, can't see it because it's blurry. The body is this way, and his head is that could have been a broken neck and death right there. That's really, really hard to watch. It was hard to watch back then. But I have to say, I think the thing that makes it, hey, what went wrong instead of a regular suplex is the fact that Benoit bridge there. When you do that suplex, the bridge and the hip, the popping the hips is what gets the guy to go further and clear and take that front flip to where he lands on a regular bump. But I couldn't even tell you why Benoit stayed on his feet, why he just did that and didn't fall back with him or throw him in a way that had Sabu land. Maybe he just assumed it was going to be like a backdrop bump and Sabu would go all the way over like that and land, like I said. But what went wrong is pretty obvious, that he didn't throw him enough to clear him. His body didn't go back with him to help him clear. And the course of Sabu's life and career had changed from that point.
I can't figure out what Benoit was going for, because I don't think I've ever seen anyone try and hook one leg like he does there and then just do a regular backdrop. But I'm presuming Benoit thought that he would flip over.
He had to assume, like, this is odd, because you have this right here, hook the foot, hook the knee, like he's hooking it like, I never seen a hook like that on the shin as you're tucking under forward. Like, I would assume right here, this is a really weird way to grapevine the leg and do a Northern Lights where you're bridging. That's what I would assume would have happened, because right here, and Sabu's being launched straight up. Straight up. Once you do that on a backdrop, on a hip toss, on a power slam, on anything, if you're up like this, you have no time to tuck. You're landing, you can only hope to land. The only way he would have landed worse than this is chin up. Chin up would have broke his neck straight up even worse. But that sideways, like there, body sideways, and look at his neck right there. The angle, I mean, what was the actual diagnosis of the broken neck? Like what levels and what kind of, obviously Sabu's got herniated disc probably at this point, and other spinal, he's probably got spinal stenosis and a bunch of stuff just from the regular bumps that he takes. But definitely, this is something that's just, I can't, even after all these years, this was 1994, I believe, correct?
94, yeah. He may have said it in an
So-
interview with me because I think I asked him twice because I forgot I asked him the first time. And I think I asked him, maybe I asked him like what exactly was broken, but he didn't put it in his book. He wasn't very specific about what he put in his book. But let me give you something that he did say. Quote from Sabu's book, as to why it happened, I just think he was kind of indifferent, he being Chris Benoit, and didn't care all that much about not stiffing me a little laying it in snug. That's why he looked so crisp. I think overall he figured I could take it. Indifference to risk in making the wrestling looking good really is the definition of what happened here. So after it happened, I lost feeling in my hands. Regardless of my hatred of hospitals, they rushed me to the hospital and put me under. I guess I was pretty crazy. I started to wrestle again on shows for ECW in a very short time after that, with only maybe a few weeks of healing under my belt. This was certainly against doctor's orders, but since when did I care about doctors? There's a bit more I could read out if you want me to, but I mean, can you imagine getting back in the ring after? I mean, you rushed back to the ring too early.
Yeah, mine was still 5 months, and I had the vocal cord issues and stuff that slowed me down, because if I could cut a promo, I probably would have went back even sooner because I needed the money. But him rushing back in weeks, and I remember him working with the neck brace, and that didn't necessarily, that was just, it wasn't a Philly collar, the hard shell one they kept it. It's just a soft neck brace, and it might have been more for the angle and the storyline with Benoit than anything else to get him over. But you think about it, like Sabu's life and career changed completely after that, and Chris Benoit became a star after that. It's two diametrically opposing directions. Sabu was still a star after that, but like you said, the personal demons and all that stuff, and that says something for all the stuff Sabu's endured before and after that. For just that's why we talk about him. We talk about what went wrongs. We talk about how people can improve. We criticize AEW for taking unnecessary risks with stupid little things that don't mean nothing. This move, even though ECW made it mean something, it was just a regular move that ended up changing the trajectory of a human being's life. But once again, we go back to the Janela show. The wrestling bubble does not make you think like you're in the real world. It's a very, very odd cognitive dissonance that exists, where you think, well, that wasn't a table bump, and he didn't land on the floor or anything, so how bad could it really be? Pretty much, almost in a way, the most devastating injury he ever suffered, because what it did to him afterwards.
In FMW, they did let him wear the neck brace. In New Japan Pro Wrestling, they didn't. So he had to wrestle without neck brace. He said it hurt terribly, but a bit of adrenaline and some painkillers, and he got through it.
Oh, and those Japanese rings are like literally like cement floors back then. Wow, New Japan, way to go.
So we go from what went wrong to what went right, once again featuring Sabu. And this was asked quite a few times. I think this is what we immediately came up with a what went right as well. And this is Sabu versus Rey Mysterio. This is from ECW One Night Stand, the 2006 version, just before the reboot of ECW by WWE. And it is the DDT double knockout finish. Controversial at the time, executed absolutely perfectly. So Stevie, over to you. What went right?
Let me ask you this question before we go into this What Went Right segment. What are your feelings on the actual finish? Because there was a lot of polarizing opinions about this, about the double knockout, about the non-finish, about outside of the actual spot, which is super impressive. But there were people complaining about the fact that they felt ripped off because they did not get an actual winner and loser in this match. How did you feel watching it?
At the time, I remember thinking it was a complete betrayal of everything ECW was about. I thought it almost, this more than anything else, almost set the table for what the new ECW was going to be. It wouldn't be the original ECW, wouldn't follow that vision at all. But here's the other thing. Rey Mysterio was going through just about the worst booked world title run of all time, where he was just a loser constantly. And he didn't even win this. But then you couldn't beat Sabu either because he was going to be one of the the stars of the new ECW. So they painted themselves in a corner. And there was no way out of it that would please everybody.
Well, here's the thing about that. Why did you need to even have a title match on ECW One Night Stand?
It was 2.
It was strictly in this. What's that?
It was 2. John Cena and Rob Van Dam.
No. Why did you need to have, why did you need to have this one for the World Heavyweight title when you had a non-finish, when you already had a title change going on? I agree with you in the way that you're literally saying in the ECW thing where Sabu, taped up a 1-foot gash on his bicep and continued a barbed wire match. Rey Mysterio has never given up and never said no mas and never literally said, I cannot continue. These are 2 of the most tenacious underdogs that you could ever see, that are impressive, that fight, that never quit. You literally have to wheel them off in an ambulance to be able to get them to not continue the match. So basically, with all that context, they couldn't continue the match. I agree with that. This literally showed you that this is only being half pregnant with ECW. We're going to kind of give it, but is that kind of what you're saying? Like, you guys can't continue. You've been through a lot worse, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of that's really what it's saying right there. But they're trying, I guess, with Vince and ECW to try to bring it back to a foundation and not have it start off at 11, as they would say in that movie. What's the name of the movie again?
Well, Spinal Tap.
Turn it to
this
11.
Is
Spinal Tap. Yeah. So, but the spot itself, the way it was designed, was really awesome. So let's take a look at it right here. Like I said, this is probably safer than the DDT in the ring, even though Ray really, he tucked him pretty hard on this. So let's just start here. Okay. You got Sabu standing on the top rope, balanced maybe for a second and a half. It feels like 10 minutes if you don't have the balance to do this. Ray has to position himself so the table's right under here to where when Sabu hooks Ray, then they go through the table, there's enough room to where Sabu doesn't hit his head on that apron, the corner of the apron where the bar is, and Ray can clear the guardrail and also not hit his legs really hard against the edge there because he has knee trouble. That'll blow your knees out in a hurry. Just ask Vince with his quads. So let's slow it down. Yeah, that's about as perfect as you get. He's hooking him. Ray's got the arm in there to protect him. Ray's feet are still there. Sabu's butt is protecting him. And look at all that space there. Not much, but enough right there. Boom. Neither one of them. Look at all the room they got right there. That's something that your instinct, your ring awareness, or outside the ring awareness right here is really good. And notice this right here. What does Sabu do? Keeps them hooked. You see right here, even when they come down, Ray hit his upper shoulder and neck there, not his head, but Sabu keeps him hooked. So his head really never hits the table or the floor. And Sabu, as a matter of fact, hits his head on the outside on the mat to protect him. He's even hooking him there. So Ray definitely took the safer bump. Sabu sacrificed his own body to protect. That is a great shot. Look at that right there. I love the Titantron up here and everybody. And Ray is just balancing and waiting and bracing for Sabu. That's actually a better camera angle they should have got live. Do you notice, it looks like you got I would have stayed with that angle to not show Ray being protected. The crowd kind of blocks to where it looks like they DDT'd into a sea of people. Give it to WWE. Like ECW would not have been able to in live ways because we only had the hard camera and the handheld to be able to capture all that stuff. And just see the sea of people reacting and the guys literally disappear. Look at how cool that is. That's like I'm watching from the ringside as a fan through the ropes, the ring on the other side of the ropes. Really done right. The finish wasn't so much the result of the move. wasn't so much of a what went right, but I do give WWE credit for trying to protect both guys. But in my estimation, you already had a world title match between Cena and Rob, which was going to be a title change. The rest of the matches should have been pure nostalgia to stand out, not an inter-promotional. I think this show was also Randy versus Kurt, right?
Yes, that was the opener, I think, yeah.
That was the opener, I think.
Was that the one where Randy had just gotten out of anger management?
Possibly, but he was the one that kept saying, Kurt, take it easy on me, because Kurt was just like amateur wrestling his ass off in that match. And the Randy was like, what is going on? But it was a good hard-nosed technical wrestling match between Randy and Kurt. But right now what they were looking at with the new ECW, just my guess, I would think, as I switch cameras, doing it live, pal, like Sid Vicious promo, do it live. My thing that they were trying to do, and I give them credit for that, was trying to do these dream style matchups for the smart marks, the ECW fans. What would happen if the ECW guys fought the WWE guys, but also at the same time to give them somewhat of a thing to make the ECW brand look like it was on a level with WWE. But what they did was they poisoned the water of having ECW guys not get established, and then the what if? Oh, ECW guys, man, they're kicking ass. What happens if they ever face off with? They should have, the next ECW One Night Stand, if it was still around, had the established ECW guys shining all the way within the company and the brand and never touching a Randy Orton, because Kurt Angle was in ECW. I heard he was really happy about that. Yeah, we eventually got you, Kurt. Maybe not that first time, but we got you now. But then Ray, what would happen if he wrestled Sabu? They answered these questions before the fans even formulated them, and before the fans, after formulating the question, started anticipating and screaming at WWE, I have money. Make the match. That's when you make the match. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, hey,
In
have you
words,
seen how many invasions they botched?
That's a botch watch for years.
Oh.
But what I was going to say was, you basically did 50-50. What they do today, you did 50-50 booking when the casual fans were like, who is this person?
Okay, then. So we are going to just deal with a couple of non-Sabu pieces of news that just stuck out in the last week, I guess. And one of them is, because we like a bit of technology, we do our Patreon. We do, it's all a business venture, and we're all you're bringing out a bit of merchandise. Hopefully those BWO t-shirts are going to be out soon as well. But this one really stuck out to me, Mercedes Mone. $100 per month texting service. Earlier today, Mercedes Mone, well, I say earlier today, this is like a week or so ago, I copied it from an article. Mercedes Mone launched a personal texting service on her website for $99.99 per month. Powered by VIP texting, the service offers, quote, exclusive, personal, and one-to-one chats with Mone herself. However, as soon as the announcement became public, fans started questioning the hefty price tag and the authenticity of the program. So there was upset with SummerSlam 2025 tickets, and also simultaneously, this is just regarding price gouging generally, doubts arose amongst fans regarding the interaction's genuineness, with concerns about AI-driven responses. The personal texting service is still new and has limited slots available. Writing on a website about the service, Mone claimed, "My superfans have always been my super friends. Now, like friends, we can text directly and privately." Keep using private as well. "I'm so excited to finally be able to connect this way. Sign up and text me now, Mercedes." What do you think of that?
Now, you and I are considered to be tech enthusiasts, but I've never heard of this text service that implements some sort of AI and you're texting with this person. I'm not quite sure, like, what is the actual blueprint for communication? What if 1,000 people? Yeah, I mean, she's pretty popular. What if 1,000 people?
It's limited. How can she text 1,000 people?
Well, what's it limited to?
Doesn't say.
All right, we have to bring the website up. So I don't know. I mean, why not just something like a Patreon for her? I mean, she could do tons of different tiers. And I know I look at the Y-Files. They have a Patreon where one of their tiers is a Zoom call with all the people in that tier. I guess like a $50 or $100 tier, or maybe even more, and that is limited to spots of however many. So then, boy, you have a live stream with the Y-Files team, and you can communicate, turn your camera on, do all that stuff, and they do it on their schedule of a 30-minute or 60-minute basis. So why wouldn't you do it that way? What's the texting as opposed to replying to tweets or a Patreon where you're messaging or replying to comments, much like we do, reply to messages and comments on Patreon. What's the thing that makes it worth $100 a month? That's my question.
My theory is, because one, it just sounds
she's
like
more over than me. That's why. That would be first.
I'm not sure about that. One, it sounds like a 1-900 sex chat service, the way it's described, because it keeps using the word discreetly. Oh, sorry, didn't directly. I didn't say discreetly and privately. I'm making it worse, quite frankly. Personal, one-to-one, exclusive. But here's the thing: is she's got to be making 7 figures a year, right? With AEW,
I heard she's getting somewhere near $5 million a year.
I don't think it'd be 5. Well, who knows?
Listen,
who knows?
after $1 million, dude. Listen, I'm gonna repeat it right now. We got to cut it off right now. Logan Paul, look at this long square head. It fits right. Here's the bottle cap. Here's the bottle or the neck. And then this right here. And then James will be renamed Jeff for one night. $1 million. Ha ha. Oh, aha. Aha. Yes. Do it for Sabu.
Here's my theory. Is that people, they're not saying it's AI. The fans are suggesting it's AI. I'm looking at the screen grab now. In fact, I'm going to do you. Here we go. I'll crop that slightly, but this is the screen grab I'm looking at right now. I'm sorry, Stevie, you can't see it. And it's just got some text messages back and forth. It doesn't look that impressive, quite frankly. But it just looks like a texting service. But here's the thing, is that she, once again, is making 7 figures a year, right? She's not hurting for money. We all want more. That's how it goes. But the thing is that if you're making 7 figures a year, then why would you just sit on your phone all day to make an extra 10 grand a month or whatever it is? Texting, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to dedicate your entire days texting to random fans all day for a service. But it does make sense if these are automated text messages or someone else is doing them for you.
That's my question. Is it a thing where there's text services like companies or rec centers or government or any of that stuff that put out text alerts? Like we could sign up for a text service to say, this week on the Stevie Richards Show, we're going to dedicate an episode to Sabu. Then people can answer and we can use those as comments. Now, I don't know what the personal element of that. This is an automated text service before AI that you can schedule text, put them up. It's like a newsletter. Here's what we got. We got a BWO t-shirt for sale, things like that. That I can get. Hey, there's a way for me to let my fans know what I'm up to, what my schedule is, and you get some exclusive photos or whatever of me working out or whatever. It's like a Patreon. But why wouldn't you just do a Patreon? They have the infrastructure set up for tiers, for limits, for selling digital products, for selling physical product. Patreon's a pretty good platform, and they don't take anywhere near as much as like a YouTube membership or other things. Plus, in our case, we can put stuff up that's not going to be copyright claimed or content ID'd, and we're free to play sound and all that stuff. So I don't understand why she wouldn't do this service. And this is somebody that tries to, we talk about cinema cameras, 6K, 12K, trying to beat the brakes off Devon and Maven with their quality. But it's supposedly all we got to do is just charge people $100 a month to text me. So that's good. Even Cameo. This girl could make, I don't know if she has a Cameo, but she could charge $100 a Cameo and make the same 10 grand a month talking to fans. They would probably accept her 20-second Cameo and be fine with it.
Yeah, but here's the thing. She would have to be involved in that. Whereas this text thing, she doesn't. This is completely passive income.
So she has a service doing the whole creation of the text, what it's going to be, and how do you interact with it? So does she have somebody pretending to be her?
No,
answering?
I think it'd be AI. I know a couple of people who work with, right, AI for what we use that's publicly available is crap for the most part, right? But some AI that I know that some companies use is so good now that they have customer service people who answer and will interact with you, with the ums and ahs and unsures and, try and have them be a real person.
Amazon does a great job of that. Yeah.
They're not. Yeah, yep. Exactly. And it'd be so much easier just to do that in text messages. I mean, you've got AI, completely robotic, whatever, psychologists, even though it'll say this is not a real psychologist, this is ChatGPT or a version of it or whatever the engine it uses. But it will interact with you almost as well as a real person will now, because it's advancing so much, this technology, so quickly. I think this is what it is. This is just a bunch of passive income for $100 a month for people to at least think they're texting Mercedes Moné. That's what I think this is.
But they're sniffing it out already. The fans, she hasn't said anything. The people that run whatever service haven't admitted to this, but the fans are suspecting that it's AI. Here's my question. It's 2025. I think everybody is pretty aware of the economy and things are tightening up, layoffs, things like that. Everybody right now is unstable, at least for the most part financially, or they're just thinking $100 is a lot of money. It's enough to fill up, you can't even fill up more than one grocery bag for $100 anymore. So you're going to put $100 into this. And I'm not saying this girl's not a star and there's not going to be people doing it. My question is, it doesn't seem like it's clear on exactly what the service is, that they haven't fleshed out. Like in our Patreon, I go back to that because it's like it took a while to figure it out, but we defined what it is. Watch alongs on Monday, behind the scenes, show notes Wednesday or Thursday, pre-show Friday, and then whatever else in between of our process. People get that. With this, what are you getting? Everybody deserves, hey, it's a free market, it's a free country, somewhat. But if she can make $10,000 doing this and people will pay for it, who are we to say it's not worth it? But I don't know what it is.
Exclusive, one-to-one, personal, private. As I say, it's got like sex chat lingo in it. Here's something else. Get my private number that only my superfans can use. Spots are extremely limited, quote. So if you want to chat with me directly, don't wait. Let's make this happen. Be the first to know with blah, 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 and just like figure it out for early access and all that kind of thing.
Can somebody share that private number with us and we'll test it out live on the show?
That'd be so fun. Well, here's the thing then. That'll be another way to find out that it isn't actually her private number, is because if you just gave that so-called private number to somebody else, would they react to you in the same way? Or would they have a clearance kind of thing where they know this number's not authorized, not paid, and etc.?
I want to repeat this again in a different way. I have no problem with this person at all. And I have no problem with them trying to make money and trying to capitalize on their popularity. Even making seven figures, if she's taking this money and doing whatever she wants with it, if people want to pay it and they get satisfaction and they think they're talking to her, or God forbid, hopefully they might be some sort of real interaction with Mercedes Moné, that's great. I'm just saying, you're more, how can you be so much younger than me and so much more grizzled? I'm giving people the benefit of the doubt when they've screwed me over 150 times in my career. I'm so gullible.
It's just suckers. Just some people are born. I'm not saying you, but whoever pays this is a born sucker. If you think you're texting Mercedes Moné, absolutely you're not.
Now, if you said you will be texting directly and privately with Mercedes Moné's cat, oh my goodness, we got Mr. Cupcake. How are you today?
That's funny. Hi, Mercedes. What are you doing today? I'm with my dog trainer trying to potty train Bugs Bunny. So there you go. You could actually ask, just for $100 a month, you could ask those burning questions. Right. We're going to ask you one more.
Hello, insert name here.
That's what it is. That's what it is. It's just a form that's filled in, I'm telling you.
Did you ever experience that where you walked up to somebody and you know they forgot your name and all that stuff, and you're like, "Hey, how you doing, James?" And you're like, "Hey, you."
Yeah, I've done that to a lot of people. I remember once, right, someone, like, this was like when I was 18, 19, and we'd hung out loads together, and he walked up to me, shook me and said, "Hey," and I went, "James." I went, yeah, how have you been? And I just went, "What do you care how I've been? You don't even remember my name." And I just walked straight off. I remember that vividly.
Yeah, and I absolutely can concur by knowing James. Even we're coming up on a year right now that absolutely happened, knowing James' personality.
Yeah, but honestly,
no filter, no BS. You're basically Sabu.
Yeah, I was just like, what do you care? You don't even know my name. Anyway, forget it.
I think that's why Sabu really liked you and texted you at 5 a.m. and would do the interview.
That was still weird.
He knew you were just as grizzled as him.
Last thing before we shut down the show, Becky Lynch. I didn't put this in the format. I added this at the end for some stupid reason. I thought, well, we might not get to 2 hours. Anyway, we're at 3 hours almost, like we always are. But I would be remiss if... I heard about this a couple of days ago, wherever I heard it, and I thought it was a good thing to bring up. Why are WWE so intent on making Becky Lynch a heel? That's the question.
That is a very good question. But I think I answered a little bit earlier with the Sabu stuff, where they try to change what he was naturally already great at. People want to like her. She got over. Nia Jax punched her in the nose. She stood there in the people in the crowd. That was her moment. That was her moment that made her a star, and she ran with it and became the man. Worked Charlotte. There was all that stuff and everything, and stayed perennially kind of the upper to the top, whether she left or came back temporarily, however long she stayed. But they want to make her a heel. Now, if you want to talk about certain theories, alternative theories, are they trying to make her less than because she did go away to have a baby, and she had done an interview a while ago saying wrestling wasn't the most important thing in her life anymore? God forbid, right?
Yeah.
Home Alone. Did your Home Alone face. Do it again.
Have you been criticized for that before? What, wrestling isn't the most important thing in your life?
No, I was a complete phony and acted like it was the most important thing in my life. I love this business. Yes, you're a good person. You're a good person. I look up to you. And I would say just like that. I don't think I remember
someone. Sincere. I remember someone. I've never interviewed, but I remember talking to someone in the business, and this person said, "Hey, some people, even when I was getting into the business, looked at me lesser than because I didn't want to do this my entire life." And I thought that was so stupid a way of looking at it, because what does it matter? It was like somehow you're less than. You know, if you haven't wanted to be a wrestler since, you figure forward your way out of the womb or whatever you say. It's like, what difference does it make as long as, you've got a passion for it now and you're, willing to learn and et cetera, et cetera. What's the difference?
Well, because they secretly, maybe not so secretly, the promoters, the people in the business, the people in the company, they want to squeeze every bit of usefulness out of you. And then when you're not totally on board with doing stuff to self-harm yourself or put yourself to where you can change the trajectory of your life and career, you have a bad attitude. You want to protect your body? You want to get out of this somewhat healthy? You want another chapter or 2 or 3 in your life? You selfish son of a bitch. We're a family. What are you talking about? Oh, you're released. It's only business.
You can come back anytime. How about tomorrow?
Hey, you're welcome back I told that story. Hey, Stevie, you're welcome back whenever you want. Okay, I'll see you Monday. Whoa, wait a minute. So what's the deal with Becky Lynch?
That's what I was going to ask, because this is now the second time. I had a theory in my head, is that she really wants to be the bad guy, or just enjoys playing the bad guy more. And I think, doesn't it just get to a point where you're just pushing water uphill, or whatever that saying is?
Well, her heel character, to me, it's not as good as her babyface character, because even though the saying is, or at least the comparison is, it's much easier to be hated than loved. Her and Cena are the opposite. People like them no matter what. Even though Cena gets the dual chance of you suck and let's go Cena, Becky doesn't even have a 50-50 right now. she's mostly still cheered to some degree, or at least they watch. And the apathy, too, of not knowing how to do this or how to react to her is not positive. It's negative. I feel like that Cena and Becky, you can tell they are acting like a heel. They're playing a heel. I'm mean. I don't care about you. I care about me.
You made me do this.
You made
Each
me.
and every
You don't know
one
me.
of you.
You don't know me. You don't. Remember that?
We still haven't watched that yet, you know.
Marina Shafir.
Yeah, we
I
still
said her
haven't watched
name
that.
right. I think I called her Shakira or something. I did a
Shakira,
Russo.
Shakira.
But that's what it is. It's not. There's no truth in it. Now you can't, and also you can't come onto TV in the past, and you're going to be a mother, the most baby-faced job ever to exist in history, and then come back and be a heel for the second time. You're in dangerous Paul Orndorff territory of you're a babyface, a heel, a babyface, and a heel. Guess what? We don't care either way. That's the worst. And that's where she has to be careful. So she's not getting the other girl over, the friend, Lyra Valkyrie, I think her name is. Mm-hmm. She's not getting her over. The girl looks green in the ring with her. The girl doesn't hang promo-wise. The girl doesn't sting her with truths. It's flat and it's dead on arrival. I don't know. To me, I feel like even though it's a different regime, my thought is they never forget when she said, or they never forgot. They never forget what you say ever. But they didn't forget when she said, this is not the most important thing. So therefore, you're not the most important thing to them anymore. That's what it feels like. I have no other explanation for it.
Yeah, there's been a theme of ever since Drew McIntyre changed up his character completely, and then he always had his reasons for doing the things he did, and they were always grounded and based for the most part. You could see where he was coming from for most of the reasoning for his dastardly actions, where ever since The Rock disappeared with after John Cena did the thing with Travis Scott and etc., that doesn't ring true. And then the Becky Lynch thing feels even more forced, and I don't get it. It's like she had a huge cheer when she returned, and most people figured she was returning. So it wasn't like the biggest surprise in the world, or a lot of people did anyway. But then, yeah, I don't get that one. I mean, and I wonder how much autonomy or how someone in Becky's position could just go to the creative team and say, actually, I'm more comfortable as a heel and I want to do this, and they'll go, okay, fine, and we'll work it in. But then there's sort of like this almost like retconning to sort of just conjure up a half-baked reason for the actions.
Well, and also, here's the thing. People know she's married to Seth Rollins. Why is she not in the group?
Yes.
If you're going to give her heed, she wants to be with her husband. I don't care about your fans or the people that love me. I love my husband, and I'm standing by him. That group needs a woman in order to do what they need to do, because Judgment Day is kind of just, their days are numbered as far as they have the females. They're going to break up. Something's going to happen. It's long overdue. That group, having Becky as a woman to even do the old Savage and Elizabeth spot and stand in front of the babyface male, I can't move her. I can't touch. You see what I mean? There's tons that can be done. But now, I understand it. You're a bitch. You're not a good woman or anything. You love your husband. So I understand your motivation for being a heel now because you want to join him. And then Paul can be the Paul Heyman guy for a female for the first time. It can be a special thing. Yeah, but yeah, even if Becky wants to creative, here's what creative has to do. All right, you want to be a heel, but now we got to look at how many, the ECW Elimination Chamber ratios. We got to look at how many baby faces and heels we have in a company, who you're going to work, how's this going to hurt merchandise sales, and why aren't we putting you with your husband? Why do they keep avoiding that until, guess what? It's 5 years too late, and then they put them together and nobody cares.
I think the other thing is that just how quickly it happened. Because she came back to WrestleMania.
If it should have happened, it should have happened at WrestleMania. During that match, if you're going to do it. Not win the tag belts and then you won the tag belts and then you turned your back after winning a championship with your best friend. She never explained it. Did she? Did I miss something?
Yeah, I think she probably explained it, but it was the fans that made her do it. It was a bad explanation.
So the fans made her do it, so then the fans can say, well, why would we buy a ticket? We make our favorite wrestler turn heel. Yeah. I got to turn the TV off. I'm responsible for making the product worse.
Yeah, the tickets are expensive and a detriment to the product. Anyway, one more thing very briefly. Apparently, she was upset about people comparing her to Hulk Hogan, calling her Becky Hogan. I suspect this was because she just ended up in WrestleMania with no build, nothing happening. She was gone for a year and then goes straight back into a prominent match. And she said something to the effect of, "Why would I want to be compared to the scummiest person on earth?" I was like, okay, so you're shooting on Hulk Hogan there, who at the moment pretty much nobody likes. So even that, is probably getting the points.
I still make the point that if Hogan had any kind of power or stroke or control of any sort, nobody would ever say those things in wrestling. The wrestling bubble, once again. Mm-hmm. It's cold to down on Hogan or dunk on Hogan right now. That's it. And maybe the generation's different. They don't care. They don't whatever. But if Vince was there and he was still Hogan's, he supported Hogan and whatever Hogan did, he was the biggest draw ever. Okay. You could probably say that scummy wrestlers on top and across the board. You know what I mean? You could say a lot of different things.
Right, on that basis, this has gone 3 hours almost, I think, if it's not 3 hours already, so because we had to record it in 4 different parts for various reasons, I forget why. But anyway, that being said, we'll catch you again next Friday. We're out every single Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, and I think it's 7 p.m. UK time. I'm so bad with the time still, after all these years, Stevie, I tell you. And then there are going to be clips on the YouTube channel every single day as well. But before we go, Stevie is going to take us out with a thank you to our Patreon supporters.
Yeah, definitely want to thank everybody at patreon.com/Stevie Richards. I'm going to bookend it with this. I also want to thank Sabu for being so great to me and really helping me. And we talk about the breakout match that we're going to do a watch along on Patreon, the House Party 96 match against him, but also becoming a friend over the years. I really do appreciate that. And I know a lot of people in the Patreon community were offering condolences and reaching out and seeing how wrestlers were feeling. And that's really great that fans are taking that initiative for people in the ECW family, because it really is. And it's not a joke when I say that. With Sabu and others, we could see each other once every 10 years and pick up right where we left off. It's kind of like we use the analogy of Marines or military, like you're never out of your platoon or the barracks or anything like that, or the foxhole, because we did fight a lot of wars together as far as trying to fight for the survival of ECW. And Sabu was the main person on that Mount Rushmore, one of the 3 or 4 that made ECW the urban legend it is today, the legacy it has today. And most importantly, my friend is gone. And hopefully this tribute, this tribute means something, and you guys got to laugh and know Sabu, a.k.a. Terry Brunk, a little bit better, and hopefully that legacy lives on. So we will discuss it in the watch-along in more depth. But, episode 46 of the Stevie Richards Show, tribute to Sabu. But just so you know, Sabu and everybody out there, we will not forget you, even up to episode 400,046. So thank you for everything, Sabu. You are missed and you are loved. See everybody next week.